Welcome in to Check the Mic. Steve Palazzolo, Sam Monson. We're live on YouTube. Happy Mock Draft Monday. Sam, it's your turn. Your mock draft coming up today live. Going pick by pick in the first round.
Yep, let's do it live.
Doing it live. So you didn't pre-prepare anything here today for your mock draft?
Nah, we're just gonna go.
I'm probably gonna. I'm going next week with mine. I'm gonna be like thinking about it all week. Try to have it sorted. For those who are new here, we go mock drafts every single Monday, different variations, different versions. We're going to have one for you at some point, the fans. Maybe draft week, maybe the week before the draft, because we're getting close here. Yeah, that's right. Don't want the hand size thing comes up when I point at people. But we're going to do the listener viewer mock draft coming up soon, right? Put some picks in there and you get to pick. So if you're mad about the picks, you get to do your own in a few weeks. We also have to find some time, Sam, to do our draft bets. And we still have to review some of the season bets. We'll do that right after the draft. Go through all of those. But draft bets. So if you've got your strong takes, you can start emailing those in, right? I guarantee this is going to happen. We'll put some coffee on the line. Tell us what you think is going to happen in the draft that you really, especially if it disagrees with something we've been saying.
Yeah, I mean, standard, every year we forget weird things happen, so this guy will never be available whenever, like every year it's like every draft is the first one. We've never seen one before, and so everyone speaks in these declarative statements and guarantees and absolutes, and like ridiculous things happen every single draft.
And not our listeners are smarter than that. As I've said, our listeners would never say, I 100% guarantee my team will do this or won't do that or whatever. If this guy's on the board, right, my team is 100% taking them. Those are my favorites. So if you have some of those, like I know 100% if the Giants have Shedeur Sanders on the board, we're taking them. Those are the ones I want the most.
Imagine this time a year ago putting a mock draft in there where the Falcons would have selected Michael Penix Jr. number 8 overall. You would have been laughed as an imbecile, and it would have been worst mock ever, like every other one. But like that would have been roundly criticized as an idiotic mock draft, and yet that's the thing that happened.
Absolutely the worst mock ever. So I see you got a little mug check time, everybody raise your mugs. What you got?
So this one's got a little story to it.
Nice.
So it's from Ma Hubbard's, right, which is a little truck stop thing in Ireland. I think this one is from the Cashel Ma Hubbard's down here, but it's such a perfect mug size that now this is quite some time ago, so presumably the statute of limitations is passed on this, but this was a liberated mug from Ma Hubbard's because I like the mugs were so good for like tea. It's the perfect tea mug size, so they don't sell them, or they didn't at the time, so I was forced to liberate the one that I had.
Liberate as in you stole it?
Yeah, a little bit.
Interesting. Stolen mug. That's good. That's a good story. That's a good history.
But 25 years later or whatever, I still prize possession.
That's great. It's still there.
And I'm a whole ocean away, so it's not like Ma Hubbard's can come after me for it, probably.
Like I liberated my Yeti.
Right.
That I cleaned last night, and I'm drinking from today. All right, baby. Let's go. It's Mock Draft Monday. You're going to do a little screen share here, watch along. You haven't done it in advance. We're going to talk through, and we'll go through all of our picks in the first round here.
Yeah.
So Titans are on the clock here. Sam, what are you going to? Oh, and so tell me how you're doing this. Every mock is different. Most, 99% of people like to do predictive mocks. I like to do GM mocks. I'll probably do a combination of both next week. What are you going to do with your mock draft here?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. So a combination of both. What do you think? Should I just go insane and do what I would do?
Depends on how much how much clickbait you want to put out there into the ether and social media. Because 33rd, it's going to come from the 33rd account. It's going to come from the new CTM show account, which, by the way, you should follow on Twitter, CTM_show, right? So it's going to go out there. This is Sam Monson's mock draft. It's going to go out there context free. What do you want to go out there?
Yeah, I mean, you gotta bear in mind who you're representing here when you do these things. I think a combination is probably the most sensible thing. Particularly because what I would do, I think, is the most boring thing at the top of the draft. Yeah. I actually think what will end up happening, it makes the draft more interesting when it comes to Shedeur Sanders. So anyway, whether it's what I would do or what will happen, I think number one is the same. It's been Cam Ward for a while. The reports are now emerging, that it's basically set in stone. The Titans have apparently canceled workouts with Shedeur Sanders, with Travis Hunter, I think was the other one. So that's basically a giant neon sign saying we are picking Cam Ward. We've already made the decision. Done.
Yeah, I think that's pretty well locked in. We've talked about this decision quite a bit, and reminder, we'll be talking about the decision that night. We'll be live on the air right here on this channel. If you're not subscribed and already locked in, we'll let us be your second screen, or maybe your first screen that particular night if you like to mute ESPN and NFL and look at us first. So we'll be talking about a draft night, but yeah, Cam Ward to the Titans. I feel like we've discussed that enough, and that's probably what's going to happen come April 24th.
Yeah, so I think it's what will happen. I think it's what should happen. You don't pass up quarterback if you think one is there that you can, that will be a franchise guy. I think Cam Ward has enough tools there, has enough positivity on his tape. The question marks you can always talk yourself around or out of. He should be, the top quarterback off the board, and the Titans need it. So it just makes sense. Number two, though, is where I think it gets interesting, because you can argue the same thing for the Browns. They've got this Deshaun Watson contract. It's basically becoming pretty clear, and I think this was true before he tore his Achilles again, that Watson has played his last down at Cleveland Brown. Whether or not they're stuck with his contract or him on the roster is another matter, but I don't think he's playing for them anymore. So the only way out of that is to find a new quarterback who doesn't cost a lot of money, because Watson's contract is taken up so much. Number two overall is the perfect way of achieving that. I would probably take Shedeur Sanders. Whether or not, you think he's an elite prospect, he's a way out. Like, he's a potential way out of this thing. And I think there's enough good there that I would be comfortable taking him at the top of this draft. It's starting to sound, though, like that's not what's going to happen, that these teams at the top of the draft who do need a quarterback still, Cleveland, New York Giants, they might pass on him and suddenly start this sort of chaotic slide of where does Shedeur Sanders actually end up going? How far down the first round does he slide? Is it possible he slides out of the first round entirely if he was only there, artificially because teams needed a quarterback? So I think suddenly this number two overall pick ends up being a non-quarterback position. And at that point, I think it's basically, do you like the kind of the perimeter position ability of Travis Hunter, wide receiver, cornerback, or do you like the best pass rusher in the draft, Abdul Carter?
All right, there's a lot to unpack here, because I'm seeing rumblings. I'm seeing people, and maybe it's the people. The people are saying, hey, if the Browns take someone else at 2, Abdul Carter, Travis Hunter, keep an eye. Doesn't mean Shedeur Sanders is off the table. Same thing with the Giants, right? Some of the dinners that the teams went out with featured both players. Dion was kind of hinting at, hey, one of them's going to end up in Cleveland, right? Where I think I had been thinking that's Abdul Carter in Cleveland if it's a non-quarterback. But I think it is more on the table that it is potentially Travis Hunter. But then the story becomes, will the team that either took Hunter or just passed on Shedeur, it doesn't have to be the Hunter team, will the Giants or the Browns go get Shedeur in the first round somewhere? And I saw somewhere else, secondhand, the betting market is leaning toward Shedeur going to the Saints. Yeah. Now let's remember here, before we run with these things, draft night 2023, the betting markets, up until about 7:00, Will Levis, number 2 overall. The thing was hot, right? Will Levis is the favorite to go number 2 overall. Somebody tried to claim that was fake. I don't believe that was fake that night.
No, the morning of the draft.
It swung. Morning of the draft, it swung. And then right before the draft, it swung to C.J. Stroud. But the day of the draft, the Will Levis hype was through the roof.
Yeah, no, 100% guaranteed the morning of the draft, at least for a period of time, Will Levis was the betting favorite to be the number 2 overall pick of that draft.
So there's crazy stuff that happens. But I'm watching the, you know how I do it, Sam, the 1999 draft, watching it, live tweeting it last night, and some of the drama there and the trade up for Ricky Williams. And I'm yearning for that on draft night. I want that to happen. So I'm kind of rooting for Abdul Carter, Travis Hunter, some combination of them at 2 and 3, and then the Shedeur watch and some sort of aggressive move to go get him. I think that would be awesome.
Yeah, well, the same. So the 2023 draft again, the CJ Stroud draft. Obviously, the other thing that is relevant from that draft comparing to this is the Texans grabbed CJ Stroud, and then they tried to have their cake and eat it, and I guess successfully did. They came back for Will Anderson, right? Who was presumably kind of alternative approach if you didn't get a quarterback in that draft. They decided they wanted both. They make the they make the selection for Stroud, and then they give the giant trade to come back up and grab Will Anderson. A couple of ways. So you can look at that and say, well, why can't the Browns or the Giants or whoever get Shador in addition to, Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter, like the blue chip defender that they want as well? A couple of differences to that. Now, they could. I mean, this is on the table. This is why it becomes interesting. A couple of slight differences, though. Number one, the Texans had a pick lower in that first round, right? They didn't need to come from the second round all the way up. They already had.
They were picking at 12. Yeah, they had pick 2 and pick 12. So going into the draft, a lot of people were saying you take Stroud at 2, Jackson Smith and Jigba at 12, right? We're trying to figure out what do the Texans do with their 2 picks. Instead, they traded up to get Will Anderson. Yes.
So in terms of executing the trade back up for the defender, they were much better positioned to do that than either the Browns or the Giants will be, who will be coming from the top of the second round, jumping, potentially a lot further in order to make that happen. That's a harder trade to swing. The second thing, though, so that works against the team this year. The thing that works for them, though, is that if you grab the defender first, you do it the other way around from the Texans. The Texans were like, if we don't get Stroud here too, he's gone. We don't get him. We have to take him first and then come back for the defender. The calculation this time around is we don't think Shedeur Sanders is worth this pick, and we don't think another team is going to take him for a while. Let's put the Saints out there as the team that might do it, right? We don't think he's going to go until number 9. So we actually don't need to get from the second round all the way up to 3. We need to get from the second round to 8 or to 9 if the Saints will move out of that draft pick. So that works for them in that they don't necessarily have to move as far because they think Sanders might actually slide a bit if they don't pick him with that number 2 or number 3 overall pick. So I think this is the kind of calculus that's going on if they like him right now. If they don't like him at all, it's obviously off the table. They're just picking the defender and moving on. But if either one of those, the Browns or the Giants, like Sanders, but also think most of the rest of the league doesn't, this is the kind of calculus that's going on. Could we get both? Could we make it happen so that we grab our blue chip defender with the top pick and then get the quarterback later on?
I think that's well laid out, Sam. The other calculation that's being made there is the difference between Shedeur Sanders and the next group of quarterbacks. So assuming the Giants and Browns they both want to come up with a quarterback. And I don't even know if this is as much it's kind of a combination, a knock on Shedeur and, hey, we want this blue chip player, right? So when you pass on the QB at 2, you're saying, well, if he's not worth it at 2, how could he be worth it later? Yeah. I think it's more so, hey, we can add Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter to our team. We should do that first and then play the game. If we think Shadeur's worth, they might say, hey, Shadeur's worth going up to 20. But if he's gone before 20, we're not going to do that. We'll go Jackson Dart. We'll go, insert your favorite developmental quarterback here. So I think that's part of the discussion as well, which is how close is Shedeur Sanders to the next chunk of quarterbacks, and let's make sure that we get our blue chip player in first, so that and then we'll figure out the quarterbacks after. So it does seem like that is more realistic. So I am curious to know where you're going to go as a guy that is on record saying you would take Shedeur Sanders number 2 with the Browns. Are we trying to be a little predictive here? Have you reconsidered? Do you want to try to play that game?
Yeah, very briefly, it's that thing we touched on before. That blue chip conversation changes everything, right? That's the thing. It's not so much, I mean, it is a referendum on the quarterback, Shedeur Sanders, but it's also, first and foremost, we could get a game-changing, difference-making player, Abdul Carter, Travis Hunter. Like, we could get a blue chip player and then figure out quarterback after that. Then we have the debate how much is. So we've essentially said the more important thing based off what we believe about Shedeur Sanders, the better and more important thing is to get the blue chip defender in the door. Once we've made that decision, then we have almost a whole separate decision about, well, how good is Sanders? Is he worth trading from here to here? Is he worth doing something else crazy? Is he this much better than the next tier of quarterbacks? But it's that blue chip defensive kind of decision that's first and foremost. Like, can we pass? They almost look at it in reverse, right? Instead of can we pass on a quarterback to grab something else, it's like, can we pass on one of these blue chip players, of which there are, 3 or 4 in this draft, to go and do something else. So I think that's where the Browns are leaning. I think it's a defendable decision. It's not one I would make. If they're doing that, I would grab Travis Hunter. We just to tease something that we have coming down the pipe. We're working on a video where we've basically asked every, draft content creator we can think of, who is your favorite prospect for however you want to do it, any round, any position, for any reason. Who is your favorite prospect in this draft? We've got a bunch of videos back so far. We're going to stitch them all together and basically just create one long kind of montage of everybody's favorite draft prospects. Without spoiling it, more than one reply so far has been Travis Hunter, just because he is this unique, two-way potential player who could be the best corner in the draft, could be the best receiver in the draft, could be the best at both at the same time. Genuine, unique prospect. I do feel that the longer this goes, like, teams are going to get drawn to that, whether or not they plan on using him as a two-way player. He is special, is the point. And I think the Browns will end up taking him at 2.
Yeah. Personally, I came to this conclusion a couple weeks ago. I would take Hunter over Abdul Carter. I want to play that game. I want the 1.5 players, and not because it's necessarily relevant, but it was fun. Back in the 99 draft that I was watching last night, they were debating. Champ Bailey had played about 300 snaps on offense that year.
Yeah.
And so they went to the panel and they were debating, can he do this at the next level? Is he just a corner? It wasn't as strong as Travis Hunter because most people thought he was a corner, but they were having that debate. Is he too tired? Did it affect his? It was a lot of the same discussion we're having now about Travis Hunter.
Champ Bailey gets kind of forgotten about in that discussion, but he's arguably been the closest to what Travis Hunter's done in terms of like how much he did it. Like guys like Chris Gamble, did that. Like quite a lot of players have done that. They'll have a package on Charles Woodson, like guys that have played on offense. Champ Bailey maybe did it more than anybody else before Travis Hunter. Like he actually, as he said, 300 odd snaps. He played quite a bit on offense. And yet was almost immediately like, you're just a corner. Forget all that. Nobody's been anywhere near Travis Hunter in terms of, how much they've played on the other side of the ball, but quite a few guys have at least done bits of it.
All right, man, I haven't seen this combination, but I think he's sitting here on April 7th. We're hearing more and more about non-quarterback for the Browns, and I think more Travis Hunter to the Browns at 2. So that puts the Giants on the clock at 3. And for so much, I think just the way the pieces fit in, I had wanted to see or had felt like, hey, Abdul Carter plus Myles Garrett, what a great 1-2 punch. The Giants with Travis Hunter, they don't need the edge as much. Now there's a bit of a curveball here. The Browns take Hunter. Giants are at 3. If you care about the current depth chart, they have Kayvon Thibodeau in year 4 out of potentially 5 here as a first-round pick, and Brian Burns, making almost $30 million a year at edge. Does that affect what they want to do here at number 3?
Yeah, the Giants are, I think, in a kind of interesting spot if this happens. Obviously, first and foremost, you have the Sanders discussion again. They have a couple of quarterbacks, neither one of which is a long-term option, neither one of which would stop you drafting a quarterback at the top of the draft if you believe that he is the guy. You've also got the connections, like the regime in New York has been hanging around like Shedeur Sanders all season long. Like he showed up to his bowl game in like Giants cleats. Like the connection has been there for the whole way. Now, you would just say that's just smart recruiting, right? Whether you wanted to take him or not, it would be wise to at least keep him happy so that all that's good. But that's a decision, right? Do they believe in Shedeur Sanders as the guy at this spot? Obviously, if they do, you take him immediately and you thank your lucky stars that he got past Cleveland. If you don't, though, then you do get into that interesting situation where, okay, do we grab Abdul Carter, even though edge is not like a glaring need? It's edge rusher. Number one, it's always a position where you can platoon these things anyway. Number two, I think it's probably a bigger need than it looks on paper because Thibodeau, I don't think has been phenomenal. But maybe the most obvious pick if they didn't have Shedeur Sanders would have been Travis Carter, and that one just disappeared. But then you're into the would Mason Graham pair with Dexter Lawrence as a really nice interior player? They're another team where offensive line is arguably a huge need. Do they trust any offensive lineman at number 3 overall? I don't know that this is a great spot for the Giants if it manifests this way.
Yeah, you said Travis Carter by accident. Travis Hunter obviously is who you meant, but no, it's all good. The Mason Graham pick is an interesting one. I don't know if I would do it. But I still think I would go Abdul Carter as a need-based hater and draft the best player available type of thing. As you mentioned with Thibodeau, they could opt out of his 5th-year option, so maybe only have one more year of Thibodeau. Even if you locked him up, is it that bad to have 3 edge rushers, right? If we're going to do the copycat league thing, look what the Eagles just did in our own division. Like, would you hate having Brian Burns, Abdul Carter, and Kayvon Thibodeau? Would that be a bad thing for your team? I do think at some point in this draft they need to attack the pass rush spot next to Dexter Lawrence because it is pretty bad. And having Mason Graham, oh boy, that would look really nice with Mason Graham starting next to Dexter Lawrence if you're talking about building a defensive line. This also opens up the trade down opportunity. And Will Anderson was the guy that was traded up for a couple of years ago. Would team the real pass rush needy teams, Carolina at 8, or just the Saints at 9, who just need, they love trading up. Would that be on the table now for the Giants? So the Giants could play this game where they trade down, take another player, or they feel better taking Shedeur Sanders at 8, or 9, or a little bit later while picking up extra draft picks. I think if Travis Hunter's off the pick at number 2, who I think the Giants want and would covet here, I could see the Giants looking to trade down, and I don't know if they'd have a partner, but I think it's way more on the table than it could have been.
Yeah, maybe. I do think, again, in this world of depends how you label them. But if they think that Abdul Carter is a blue chip player, I don't think they're trading out of this spot, even if it gives them decent, trade return. I think for a start, this regime is under too much pressure to play the long game almost in any way. So I feel like they would just take the blue chip player, make it work. The point you made is good, right? Like this idea of we have 2 starting edge rushers that we're happy with, so we don't want a third, is nuts. Like the absolute worst case scenario in terms of if all those players are good in terms of redundancy is you have 3 impactful edge rushers. Is there any team in the NFL that would turn that down just as a concept? Hey, what if I gave you 3 edge rushers that could all make an impact? Can you make that work or no? Like everyone would take that. So
especially by the way,
that's not a reason not to draft him.
Especially with Abdul Carter being a linebacker conversion who could easily move around, and he could be the interior pass rusher next to Dexter Lawrence essentially on 3rd downs, right? Because you're moving him around and you're, shooting him up the B gap or whatever. So anyway, what do you want to do here at 3, Sam? It's your mock draft.
It is. I think Abdul Carter is the pick. It just makes it's the one that makes the most sense out of the remaining options, I think. So Abdul Carter for the Giants.
And then at 4, New England, Patriots fans are hoping for one of those 2 blue chip players, either Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter. It's not happening here. So we have for the 12th straight week, Sam, is it Will Campbell? Is it Armand Membu? Like what? Let's have our Patriots left tackle debate here. Yeah,
the more you go through this whole process, the more I hate this pick for the Patriots. I hate the spot. And this is the problem, right? This is why it's beneficial to figure out needs before you get to a mock draft or before you get to a draft, because even picking at number 4 overall, you can be in a situation where you don't love how the draft falls and you have to force a fit. So Patriots have 2 glaring needs, you would say, still, even with the Stephon Diggs signing. They need offensive line and they need wide receiver help. I don't love either of those spots. Multiple positions, right, with the offensive line, but I don't love either of those fits at number 4 overall. And then the only alternative you would say is worth sort of taking in this range, if you don't want to pick either of those guys, is Mason Graham, who has some redundancy for the Patriots specifically because they have multiple kind kind of productive defensive tackles already. Obviously, they just signed one in free agency with Milton Williams. We just had a world of, hey, you're never over. You can't have too many impactful defensive linemen, right? A 3 is so you can argue the same thing for the defensive line, right? Is it a bad thing if you have all of Mason Graham, Milton Williams, and Christian Barmore all firing at the same time? Obviously, the answer to that is no, but you would sort of prefer it in terms of value if the guy that you were looking to go at a position that wasn't your area of need was at least like filling a need, right? So I kind of hate this spot for the Patriots. I think that they have to force something. And it's like, do you love Will Campbell? Do you think he can play left tackle? If you don't, do you like Armand Membu, the Missouri offensive tackle? Do you think he's worth 4 overall? To me, the conversation is basically those two things. If you think Will Campbell is a left tackle, he's the pick. If you don't, it's Membu.
Just to add some perspective here in how different the draft can be year to year, we've been comparing the Brock Bowers where he was drafted versus Tyler Warren. Imagine if the Giants had the number 3 pick last year. They sprint to the podium and they go get Drake May, who they were trying to trade up to get.
Right.
The Patriots would have had a Joe Alt, right? Here's your blue chip tackle. The Patriots would have had a debate. Their debate, instead of it, which somewhat flawed tackle prospects do you want to squeeze in here at 4? Their debate would have been the same one that the Giants had, which is, do you want to take the Chargers? Do you want to take Joe Alt's blue chip tackle or Malik Neighbors' blue chip receiver? And actually, the Patriots would have had Marvin Harrison Jr. in the debate as well. It would have been like, which blue chip player do you want to opt into here? What's the best team building strategy? So when we talk about Jimmy Johnson trade charts, and they should be altered for draft strength. And last year, there were just so many more blue chip players and viable quarterback prospects. It's much different draft this season here.
Yeah, and the problem with that is how far out can you forecast that kind of thing accurately, right? Like,
right.
I don't know how early you know the exact strengths and weaknesses in terms of how good the top is. But you're right. It's a perfect example of, in most years, picking number 4 overall with the Patriots' specific needs would be fine, right? You would have a blue chip offensive tackle or the best wide receiver in a draft who you think is a clear number 1. It's the Penei Sewell versus Jamar Chase debate, right? Bengals were picking 5 that year, right? And they had Chase or Sewell. And the answer was, you can't go wrong. Whichever one you pick is really good, is a top tier prospect, is a blue chip player at an acute position of need. Pick your favorite and figure out the rest later. The Patriots in exactly the same situation, effectively, except instead of Penei Sewell versus Jamar Chase, it's Tedero McMillan against Will Campbell and his T-Rex arms. Like, that's the problem, right? In any normal year, it's like blue chip versus blue chip. Now,
Sam,
to be fair, Sewell's arms are a little bit stumpy himself.
33-inch arms, Sam. He's got 33-inch arms. All right. You take the best measure of draft season. We know there are issues where, 89% of the people from the combine to pro day had smaller arms at combine. So it's not Will Campbell's fault here. All right, man.
I mean, whether or not his arms are 33 inches, his wingspan is the same size as mine.
Listen, Omar Tillman, I don't know if you're new here, but how did we start 30 minutes ago and we're only at pick 4? We're right on track. We are on pace. This is called on pace. We're not just here for the picks like you are. We're here for the stories, the debate, the discussion, right? Or I hope you're here for that. I know you guys just want to see who your team's going to pick. So who the Patriots picking it for?
As much as I think Membu is definitely on the table, I do still believe the idea that the Patriots believe in Will Campbell. As you said, a lot of people do genuinely take the approach of, we just take the best number when even like, it's a measurement. It shouldn't be that hard to get this correct, right? But people do. We just take the best number, whatever it is. So if you're taking the best number, Will Campbell is above the magic threshold with the 33-inch arms, and his tape's good enough. We're taking him at 4, even though we don't love it.
My favorite part about this, Will Campbell at 4 to the Patriots, I predicted a year ago that was going to be the most common mock draft pick. And I know we've debated it a ton, but it always felt like that was going to be the most common pick. Patriots have their quarterback, massive offensive line need. Will Campbell to the Patriots has been locked in for about 365 days so far. Jags at 5 here, Sam. Pivot
this
point.
One is, I still think this is there are a couple of picks in the draft where the player plus the fit makes a ton of sense, and it's almost just an instant pick, just an auto run it in. Mason Graham to the Jags has been one of those. Like almost every single mock I've done, Mason Graham goes to the Jags. It makes so much sense for either side. Maybe Graham could go before that. You know, the Patriots could grab him. The Giants could grab him. Like maybe one of those teams do take him. But if he lasts to 5, I honestly can't see a way the Jags would pass on him unless something freaky had happened and, you know, Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter was there. And even then, like, I think you can construct an argument that Mason Graham is as good a player as those guys and fills, you know, a glaring need for this team. Mason Graham going to the Jags. Like, that's it. Done.
Not a pivot point. This is sprinted in. Mason Graham. I like it. Chat brings up Michael Ruse of the Tennessee Titans. Have we brought him up before as a guy that had 32-inch arms?
I forget who it was, but somebody I think it was Daniel Jeremiah during the combine. Michael Ruse was his comp for Will Campbell, because I assume there's some kind of database involved in those comps, because they're very like measurables driven. And I mean, with the greatest of respect to DJ, I doubt his brain is that, you know, database like that he can just pull out what Michael Rue's exact measurements were based off what Campbell posted. But yeah, Michael Ruse was brought up, I think, as his comp.
2005 second round. I would love to go back. There probably wouldn't have been a ton of commentary on that, but Mayock was doing the draft at the time. I wonder if there was some discussion around that. But that's a second rounder, not the 4th overall pick, too. So
right,
you know, the point is, he turned out to be a really, really good player.
Yeah, just like in tiny synopsis terms, like there are comps for a guy playing tackle at a high level with relatively short arms. And Will Campbell, as you said, if you give him the 33, he's fine. He's over the threshold. The problem with him is actually more the wingspan thing. That remains, like, he actually lost an 1/8 of an inch or something in the measurements when he did the combine to his pro day in terms of wingspan. And his wingspan was already literally the smallest on record if he plays tackle. No offensive tackle has ever played at that level with a shorter wingspan. So that is almost, and you listen to Mike Renner believes like wingspan's a more important number than arm length anyway. Like, and his tape is already, you know, people have given him trouble at times. It's not, I don't think he has as clean a tape as guys like Joe Alt or, you know, some of these other offensive tackle prospects. So it's not so much the arm length thing, I think, as generally he is, let's call it a unique body shape for a left tackle. It would be very, very unusual for him to play left tackle at that sort of body style, but it doesn't mean he won't.
All right, so that puts the Raiders up on the clock at 6. Mason Graham goes to the Jags at 5. Raiders at 6. Sam, what are you looking at here?
Well, obviously, the first thing to figure out is what Walt wants to happen, so we can do the opposite. So, what's Walt? Walt wants? Does he want Genty? Is that what he wants to happen?
I think he wants a corner at 37, right? So he's already seeing the corner on the turn, which I kind of like. I think he might be a Genty guy here. Last blue chip available.
Last blue chip available. It does make sense. I will admit. I think 6 is the highest I would take Genty in this draft, and I think it's the one. It's a pick. It's as high as I would take him, and I think it's a pick that does fit. Like it, you know, number one is sort of in abstract terms, how high would you take a running back, even an elite prospect, and then number 2, if you're taking him at that spot, what situation is he walking into? And I think you can definitely argue that he's walking into a solid situation if you put him on this Raiders team. Like, obviously, they got quarterback sort of figured out with the Geno Smith signing. He just got extended, so I think that probably does take them out of the Shedeur Sanders marketplace now that they've given the extension. The offensive line is solid, not spectacular. The right side, I think, is a little bit concerning, but the left side of Colton Miller, you know, Dylan Parham, Jackson Powers-Johnson, there's enough to work with there. Running back is a glaring need. Like, they do need a running back, and I think you could argue that the Genty would fit here. On the other hand, like, the defense needs bodies everywhere, essentially. Like, there's almost nowhere on that defense you couldn't add a body and have it be an impact player. The one exception maybe is edge rusher. Like, if you're looking, would this be as high as you could start picking off the next wave of edge rushers, whether it's Mike Green, whether it's Jalen Walker, you know, whoever your favorite sort of concerning edge rusher prospect is. Like, theoretically, this could be as high as you start taking those guys, but They've got Max Crosby, obviously. They've got Malcolm Kuntz, who they re-signed. Tyree Wilson has taken steps in the right direction. He's not there yet, but I would assume they're still willing to give him some time. So it's probably not a spot for edge rusher. So you are kind of looking, is it Genty? Do you think Teteroa McMillan is worth a top 10 draft pick? You're obviously not in the tight end market with Brock Bowers already there, but could you take somebody like Jahdae Barron this high, given how spectacular he is? It's an interesting spot for the Raiders.
The one other name I was going to throw out there is Amar Membu, just because I don't think I just haven't seen it yet, and I try not to consume too much other NFL media at this time, so I'm not swayed. But you see a lot. I just haven't seen that name attached to the Raiders yet. And the one thing that you learn on draft night, remember Paris Johnson a couple of years ago, everybody thought, maybe he goes 11th or 12th, and the Cardinals were ready to take him at 3, and they got him at 6, I believe, with the trade down. The tackles always go higher than expected. So should Membu be in the conversation here for the Raiders? So, yeah, a lot of different ways they could go.
Yeah, I was just about to mention tackle as well as a potential option. I really like that, actually. I think as special as Genty is potentially, it's such a good running back draft. I mean, we did our running back rankings. You should go check those out on YouTube if you haven't watched it already. We struggled to come up with a top 10, not because we couldn't find enough players, because there were players at like 15 that we were trying to shoehorn into the top 10 and just couldn't find the space for them, couldn't find the guy to drop out. So as much as I do think the gap between Genty and anybody else in this draft class at running back is significant, I think you can definitely argue grab a right tackle at 6, come back later in the draft and get a starting caliber running back who could also make a material difference to your run game. That could have a greater impact than drafting Genty.
People in the chat claiming that the Raiders love DJ Glaze at right tackle. Admittedly, I can't keep up with every single press conference in the NFL and everything. I'm just curious, how do we know that? Is that Pete Carroll came in and he was glazing Glaze? What is going on here? Was it Spytech comes in? Oh, no, we're great at right tackle. We love Glaze. Was it the old regime? Or how is that true?
I mean, there's literally no way of knowing that right now, right? Like there's no reliable, in fact, there's no reliable way of knowing that, right? This was a 3rd round pick of a previous regime, right? So the only thing that could have happened is the new regime comes in and says, DJ Glaze is really good, right? Which, okay, fine. But number one, how do you know that? Because you haven't really watched him yet,
right?
Like in the flesh. And number two, how do we know you're telling the truth?
I have to warn Raiders. Seahawks fans need to come in and give Raiders fans a little history lesson here. Pete Carroll, I forget who it was. He was like, so-and-so is the best 3 tech in the NFL. And the dude was released in a month, right? So do not listen. Pete Carroll, because he was talking up DJ Glaze as a starter at the Combine. Pete Carroll has a history of, nobody's more disruptive than this guy. Jaron Reed or whoever, and it's like then they release him. So just be careful with Pete Carroll talking up players. It's not always true. So anyway,
just again, remember, like think about these things, right? It only makes sense for him to talk positively about DJ Glaze. Like it does him no good whatsoever, even if he thought this was true. And I'm not saying it is, but if he looked at his tape from last year, and his tape was okay last year. Yeah, but if you looked at his tape last year and said, this guy is an unmitigated disaster at right tackle, he will never play another down as long as I am the coach here, right? If that was his initial thought on watching his tape, he wouldn't say that out loud in front of a microphone. Like, why would you put that out there? At the moment, he's your starting right tackle on tape, on paper, right? So it only makes sense to come out and say, yeah, we have confidence in DJ Glaze. And then behind the scenes being like, dude, figure out another plan because this guy has no business starting. So don't listen to everything that coaches and GMs are saying right now.
All right, you need to make your pick. I just want, this is what I'm asking for the bet. Juwan Clark in the chat is guaranteeing a corner at 6. He says it's going to be Will Johnson or Jahdae Barron. That's what we're looking for our bet show, our prediction show before the draft. Email in, check the mic at the33rdteam.com. Email in. Guarantee it. Put a pound of coffee on the line or whatever it is, right? And we'll put some merch on the line, and that's what we'll do. So if you want to make your guarantees, I love it. I love the guarantees. That's what we're looking for the draft predictions from our viewers and listeners. Walt is upset. He wants a running back. Someone else wants a corner. Juwan Clark wants a corner. Where are you going, Sam, at 6 here for the Raiders?
Yeah, and reminder, the best way to reach us is email, checkthemic@the33rdteam.com. That's the best way of us actually seeing your thoughts.
Yes. Start sending them in. I want all those guarantees coming in right now. Let's do it.
All of them. I really like either the Membu pick, or if I'm going defense and corner, I think Jahdae Barron is a special player in this draft. I would potentially put him in that blue chip range.
Do it, man.
He reminds me a lot of Brian Branch, except without the concerning 40 time. Like, quote unquote. Like, that was the reason Brian Branch fell. I thought he was a top 10 player in that draft, and he slipped to the second round because he ran a 4.56 or something. I think Barron is in a similar bracket, only he has the 40 time.
I love it. Let's do it. Yes, they did just release Jack Jones this weekend. I think they had a massive cornerback need, regardless of what they were going to do with Jack Jones. So, Jahdae Barron, you giving into the chat here, giving into at least one, Jawan here in the chat.
I'm giving into the chat. I think he might be the best player available.
I like it. Jets at 7 here, Sam. Where are you going to go with this one?
So we have another, this is another quick potential quarterback pivot point. Do the Jets? Woody Johnson said he believes that Justin Fields is right up there with Trevor Lawrence in that draft class. However, the contract he's on certainly doesn't preclude you from selecting Shedeur Sanders. So I think the Jets have that discussion. The Saints have that discussion at 9. And then we probably get into territory of like, he's going to be there for a while other than teams trading up for him.
Do you think Woody Johnson was in there in draft meetings being like, guys, it's got to be Justin Fields at 2? And Joe Douglas is like, listen, Mr. Johnson, sir, we really think it's Zach Wilson. And Woody's over here taking a victory lap. Like, I told him Fields was the second best quarterback in the 2001 NFL draft, and he finally got his guy 4 years later.
No, I think that, so you and I, no, actually, this is not true. I am 42 years of age. You are older than that. But you and I each have memory lapses at this point of our adult existence, right? Where a name just falls out of your brain, or the recall's not there, right? Woody Johnson is 77 years old. Do you think he has any freaking idea what the hell happened a few years ago in a draft room? He doesn't remember. He's got a vague thing in the back of his head that says, yeah, we really liked Justin Fields at the time. It must have been him and Trevor Lawrence. And the Zach Wilson thing has just been like memory hold from his brain. Like, he doesn't remember what order they had people in. It's not inconsistency in his brain. He's just forgotten what happened.
All right, just making sure. I thought he was taking shots. That's who he wanted.
No, I don't believe he's got like an exact recall of the way this went down. He's like a veiled public reminder that I had this right at the time. You assholes made us take Zach Wilson. Look how that worked out. Aside from anything else, if he did think that, they would have been fired way before that.
Not to go completely off the rails, but Vlad Guerrero Jr. just signed a contract for a 14-year extension, Sam. So 2039, 2040, there are players signed through that year when we're, like in our late 50s. Just throwing that out there.
With the Maple Leafs?
Yeah. The Maple Leafs Baseball Club. The Blue Jays,
Perfect.
Sam. Toronto Blue Jays.
Same thing. Yes. It's Canada. It's all the same. Maple Leafs, Blue Jays. Like,
yeah, they get to share. He could play hockey. He could play hockey or baseball, whatever he wants to do.
It's all
Jets
Canadian
at 7.
related.
Membu here for the Jets, starting right tackle.
Yeah, I think they're going offensive line. I think at the minimum, I don't know. I do think that the Shedeur Sanders thing, I'm buying into this idea there's something of a slide happening now. So there is that. I think Membu at offensive line makes the most sense for them. Lock up the offensive line, let Fields give it a go, come back for quarterback later in the draft, and let's roll.
There were rumblings that they might try to move on from Breece Hall, and then Ashton Genty would be in play. That would feel any crazy. Ashton Genty pick would feel dirty for teams that don't have a starting right tackle or a second wide receiver, right? Like, you could justify the Bears at 10, and we'll get there in a couple picks because they have most of those positions locked in. That would be difficult for the Jets, I think, obviously, to think about running back here at 7 when they have so many other needs at crucial positions.
Yeah, I don't really understand why you would do that if you're the Jets.
All right, so Membu at 7 for the Jets. So that's tackle back-to-back years. Olu Fashanu last year to play left tackle, Membu to play right tackle. I like that for the Jets. And Panthers up at 8, which we've said for a while now. I think it's a difficult spot for the Panthers, who have the massive pass rush need, and every non-Abdul Carter pass rusher feels okay at 8, but not great at 8.
I kind of disagree. I don't think it's difficult. It's just like you have your pick effectively of every edge rusher in this draft except for Abdul Carter. It's just that every one of them as a prospect has something that, you know, you can say, well, what about this red flag? But every draft room, I'm sure, views all of those things completely differently. Like each one of them scares us to a degree because, you know, we analyze the draft every year, and you can point to individual examples where each one of those red flags, for want of a better term, has, if not led to the demise of a prospect, at least been connected to a prospect who didn't work out, right? So you can say, well, this guy had this red flag and he's a bust. This guy had this red flag, he's a bust. Each one of them, right? So they all scare me. But if you're like, who knows what the Panthers think? They might go, this isn't a red flag at all. We don't care. Like, okay, sample size, but that's just the way his career panned out. When he got on the field, he was a beast, and we love this guy. Like, they might think Jalen Walker or, you know, whoever it is at 8 is a steal. We got the best pass rusher in the draft at 8 overall, and we had our pick of the bunch. Like, this is an awesome spot.
I don't think anyone's higher than the Athletics' Dane Brugler on Jalen Walker, and we should have Dane on the show next week. I think we got him locked in for next Wednesday. Start an hour or a half hour earlier to fit into Dane's schedule. We're going to go live, I think, next Wednesday at 10 to discuss with Dane, who's had him as high as number 3 on his big board.
Yeah, and I get it. I mean, you know, people were asking the question like, oh, why, you know, where does he play? Like this hybrid player who's been linebacker and edge rusher, like where does he play? You just put him on the edge, line him up at edge rusher. He's not so freakishly undersized that you're like, this guy can't play at edge rusher. I mean, we said the last time we talked about it, he's basically the same size as Robert Mathis. He's also basically the same size as Hassan Reddick, who now Reddick's interesting because they tried to move him to off the ball linebacker where he wasn't good. And once you put him back on the edge where he played in college and was at his best in college, he was really good. So don't overthink it. The guy's a really good edge rusher. He's already got, you know, insanely good production and moves, et cetera, as an edge rusher. Just put him on the edge, let him cook.
I think that's what'll eventually happen. Walker's just more intriguing because he played both positions. And if you do have a scheme that has versatility, that does move guys around, you know, he has that experience. I think the best thing Jalen Walker does, though, is not even win the one-on-ones. It's the way he gets off the block and finishes plays. Whether it's as a spy, whether it's there's a play going around where it looks like he beats Kelvin Banks, but it's really 12 yards deep. It's not a loss for Kelvin Banks, but it's just a great adjustment by Jalen Walker to get to the sack. He is really good at finishing plays, and I do think Walker ends up getting valued as a top 10 to 12 pick in this draft. Top.
You know, his strength and ability to shed blocks and bounce off guys is insane. It's also why I'm not like, people are like, oh, put him on the edge, just watch the run come in his direction. Like, that dude is not a problem against the run. You are not
he's fine.
Looking at somebody saying this guy's a liability on the edge. You know, if you play him full time, I don't see the problem. Like, we've been, again, doing this. There's been some incredibly productive college pass rushers, but they're like 220 pounds, right? Or like 215. And you're like, that guy can't play on the edge in the NFL. Like, literally can't. It's immediately off the table at those dimensions. Jalen Walker is quote unquote undersized, but like within the margins, you know, like there are precedents for his size, and not just precedents, but like he's only like a half dozen pounds below guys like Von Miller and, you know, like legitimately some of the best pass rushers of their generation. I don't think his size is a problem at all.
I don't either. I think more of the debate is you just right around 1,000 college snaps, half of which were at linebacker, right? I mean, that's more of the question about the experience and, you know, how much, you know, that inexperience matters. Remember last year at this time, Abdul Carter had never played full-time edge. He had essentially played the same role as Jalen Walker. Abdul Carter, I thought, took a few games to get going and then progressed pretty well as the season went on. That's all I think we're talking about here with Jalen Walker of Georgia. And
I think edge rusher in particular, teams can easily talk themselves into that weakness, quote unquote, being an advantage, right? Like, oh, he's been this good when he's barely played. Like, just think what the potential therefore is once we get him some experience at this position. So, yeah, like you and I, it scares because it's a sample size problem, right? But I think NFL teams, a lot of them will look at that and say, this guy's barely scratched the surface of what he can do. So, again, that's why I think actually this kind of top 10 spot is actually a really good space for Carolina. And it's been one of the chalky picks, but I do love, I got to go find him because he's still buried on the PFF board. I do think that Jalen Walker at this spot makes a ton of sense.
Have they made any updates yet to the board?
I mean, if they have, they must have. They put the draft guide out. I think they're still just crazy low on Jalen Walker.
Yeah, because Jihad Campbell, was he as high as 10 last week? He's up to 10 on the board. So they may have some. Yeah, Trevor's going to be lower. And I get it. Like I said, I get it. You know, if you rank Jalen Walker 8th or you rank him 30th, I understand. I understand both sides of it with Jalen Walker. He's like one of my favorite players. I love the hybrid type of players. I also tweeted about that the other day, and people were like, what about Isaiah Simmons? What about Deion Jordan? And I'm like, guilty. You know, I didn't go all in on Deion Jordan, 6'7", edge rusher who could drop into coverage. But with Isaiah Simmons, I was all in on that versatility, and that it doesn't always play the versatile type of players.
In fact, it rarely does. And that's the thing. Like I'm with you. I'm kind of almost always sold on these, like the hybrid potential of what you could do. But I think a key question for that is, what if a team doesn't see that and a team just wants to bang him into a specific spot and says, you play this, right? What happens then? Now, that was a problem for Isaiah Simmons. I actually think he has an NFL position. It's the one that nobody's ever playing him at, which is safety. I think if you make Isaiah Simmons a safety at that freakish size, that's his best position. That's where he plays the best. But teams just refuse to accept that. They're like, that body has to play linebacker, can't be a safety. I think so. The question with Jalen Walker is, well, what if a team just goes, he plays edge, he plays linebacker, whatever. I think he's fine. Like, that's the thing. I'm not concerned by him being trapped in this tweener world. If a team just says, you're an edge rusher, go cook, I think he'll cook and he'll be really good. So my concern with tweeners is what happens if a team refuses to see them as a tweener and just says they're a specific position based off body tape. That's where it usually fails. Walker, I don't have that concern by. So as much as I get there being a sort of degree of, like a spectrum of confidence in Jalen Walker, I still don't quite understand why you would be as low on him as Trevor is. I feel like the floor is significantly higher than that.
I see someone in the chat saying there's no universe where he's falling out of the top 15. That's email worthy right there. Jalen Walker, guarantee that Jalen Walker does not fall out of it's kind of bold, but it's just very definitive that there's not a world, right, that he falls out of the top 15.
Right.
I said the same thing about Derwin James, who went 17. So,
I mean, again, rewind a year ago, how people were saying that about Cooper DeJean. No way he falls into the second round. There you go. Like every year.
Well, no,
every
Dallas
year.
Turner.
You ever need to go back more than one draft.
Where did Dallas Turner end up going? 17? Was it 17 that he went?
Oh, you would have got a lot of people saying, no way Dallas Turner gets past Atlanta at 8.
Well, no, because we knew they were going to get Michael Penix Jr. instead.
Right.
All right.
I'm just saying, you never, ever need to go past more than one draft to find the reason that the declarative statement you're making makes no sense.
There's no way AJ Jenkins is going in the first round. All right, let's go. Saints at 9 here, baby. Saints at 9. This is one of the more difficult ones for me every single time, and I almost want to predict some sort of aggressive move from Mickey Loomis, whatever that might be. But the Saints at 9 here, Sam.
Yeah. Now, so this is where I think you start to get into teams trading up for Shedeur Sanders' range. I think you're also in the conversation of, do the Saints just outright pick Shedeur Sanders? Now, typically, this is not a team that gravitates towards prospects that don't have the tools. On the other hand, their head coach now is Kellen Moore, who's the least toolsy quarterback that's ever been drafted. So does that change things, right? Is Kellen Moore's influence now able to say, hey, there's a place for noodle-armed small people in today's NFL at a high level. Let's go, right? And I'm not saying Shedeur Sanders is that. I'm just saying that Kellen Moore was that, and he might want to, push the propaganda for the marginal tooled athlete.
That's it rarely happens, Sam. Like you like to project. It's just not going to happen. You like to like that. I would only like tall people,
I don't know that it necessarily doesn't happen. I mean, so all Kellen Moore, well, number one, Kellen Moore is clearly going to have influence on that move, right? Who's the quarterback going to be in the future? I mean, obviously he's going to have influence on that. I don't think it's unreasonable at all to think that Kellen Moore is less enamored by the concept of take the tools and nothing else than other people.
So do you think the betting market has the Saints taking Shedeur here? And do you, for whatever that's worth, do you think this is the play? They essentially have Derek Carr for one more year, right? They can get out from Derek Carr in a year, I believe. So is this the play, longer term play for Shedeur Sanders, get him in there to compete with Derek Carr?
I mean, I think, yeah, they don't have a long-term answer at quarterback. Obviously, Derek Carr is there for another year. You know, they've talked up Spencer Rattler, or at least have, I don't know if you would say talked up, but they've excused away some of the bad play, right? By sort of saying, well, you've got to look at the situation, like what was in front of him, blah, blah, blah. So they've spoken relatively positively about Spencer Rattler. But again, like former mid-round draft pick, you're not banking on him. You can't turn the keys over to him once Derek Carr is out. So they effectively don't have a starting quarterback on the roster long term. So either that's Shedeur Sanders here, or you're getting one next year. Either one of which I think is on the table. Again, it's a referendum on what you believe Shedeur Sanders is. So I think it's definitely a spot where they're asking that question. But there's plenty of other places they could go. I mean, there's a lot of defensive needs as well. You could argue offensive line is still a need if you want to grab somebody there. Like, I think they could go in a number of different ways. Or this is, again, a trade down possibility if one of those teams, the Browns or the Giants, is looking to come up.
Yeah, I do wonder how much the Browns or Giants might want to come back up for Shedeur Sanders, if at all. Someone in the chat asking about Shamar Stewart from Texas A&M, the edge rusher for the Saints. I think we have paired them before just because of Mickey Loomis's history of grabbing Marcus Davenport or a Peyton Turner. That does feel like a very Saints pick. The freaky long athlete on the edge, even if it hasn't necessarily, like Davenport is a good player, but he didn't sign a second contract there. Neither did Peyton Turner, and wasn't really a starter. So I don't know how much that affects, you know, previous picks affect your future picks there, but certainly seems like that could be in play for the Saints. Michael Williams too. I mean, he's not as freaky of an athlete, but better football player right now than Shamar Stewart. Similar type of upside, I would say. So I think, again, most of the teams picking in the top 10 have a lot of needs and can go in a few different directions here.
Yeah, it's an interesting spot because it's a regime that you would think has time, right? Like Mickey Loomis has good job security. Kellen Moore has just arrived. You would assume he has job security. So they could take, you know, Shedeur Sanders if they like him for the future. They don't need him to play right now. You've got Derek Carr. You've got Spencer Rattler. You could legitimately draft Shedeur Sanders and say he's a kid that needs a year to learn, to figure out, hey, how to not be, you know, ridiculous when it comes to pocket behavior under pressure, and try and get that out of him before he ever sees a field in the NFL. That would make some sense.
So your choice here, Sam. Where do you want to go for the Saints?
I think I'm talking myself into the Shedeur Sanders thing. I think they could go other ways, but I actually like the idea of taking Sanders at 9, value pick relative to, you know, where people thought he was going to go a few weeks ago, and they can develop him behind Derek Carr, make it happen that way.
I like it. Just following the markets here. Market-driven draft here. Shedeur Sanders going to the Saints at number 9 overall. We're into pick 10 here, Chicago Bears. Is this Ashton Jeanty time for Ben Johnson, Sam?
I think it might be. I'm starting to buy into the idea of everything that Ben Johnson has been doing. So you sort of feel, you know, a guy that, it's not like Ben Johnson had that QB guru label, but a guy that you would assume the thing that he does is going to come in and like fix the quarterback, who's actually like, maybe the way he's going to fix the quarterback is just upgrading everything around the quarterback and making the quarterback's life easier. Like they've already done that with the offensive line. The receivers are in reasonable shape. So let's grab Ashton Jeanty and turbocharge the run game.
Yeah, I think I really see this as a potential play here. And we're just 2 years removed from Ben Johnson's Lions trading up. Well, they traded down. Did they trade down and then back up again to get Gibbs? I think they were at 6. They ended up getting him at 12. I think they may have come back up. I can't remember. But hey, either way, they took Jahmyr Gibbs relatively high, and it worked out well. So I could see this happening, given the way the offensive line was built in Chicago already.
Yeah, it is. It's worth remembering again, just the stupid video game numbers that Ashton Jeanty put up last year. Like he had 152 broken tackles according to PFF. The next closest person is at like 100 and something, right? Like 104 or whatever. Like it's an absurd gap between him and the next person.
As you mentioned earlier, too, go check out our running back rankings. Just did those last week right here on the YouTube channel. Went player by player. Obviously, both of us had Genty as running back 1. Things diverged a little bit, though. We had some different lists. Those are fun to discuss. Got a couple player rankings shows out there already. Is this where you're going?
Yep.
All right, man. I'm going to let you review the top 10 in a minute, but first, going to tell you about our friends over at Zbiotics. Surefire way to wake up feeling fresh after drinks with friends. It's with this pre-alcohol. Zbiotics pre-alcohol probiotic drink is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Here's how it works. You drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's a buildup of this product, not dehydration, that's to blame for rough days after drinking. And pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. Just remember to make pre-alcohol your first drink of the night. Drink responsibly, and you'll feel your best tomorrow. You and my buddy Jeremy was in town testing this out at the Combine, and worked pretty well. The Combine's, it's a rough week of staying up late, waking up early, meeting with people, and schmoozing with everybody around the NFL. And so we got a good report coming out of Indy. So spring is here, which means more opportunities to celebrate warmer weather before drinks on the patio, that tropical vacation, or your best friend's wedding. Don't forget your Zbiotics pre-alcohol. Drink one before drinking and wake up feeling great the next day. Go to zbiotics.com/checkthemic to learn more and get 15% off your first order when you use Check the Mic. That's your promo code at checkout. Zbiotics is backed by 100% money-back guarantee, so if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Remember to head to zbiotics.com/checkthemic. Use the code checkthemic at checkout for 15% off. All right, Sam, you want to run through the top 10 picks really quick before we go to the 49ers on the board here?
Sure. As soon as I pull the page up again. Number 1 overall, Tennessee Titans grabbed Cam Ward, quarterback from Miami. Number 2, the Browns grabbed Travis Hunter, cornerback from Colorado. Number 3, the Giants selected Abdul Carter, edge rusher from Penn State. Number 4, the Patriots grabbed Will Campbell, offensive tackle from LSU. Number 5, the Jags got Mason Graham, defensive tackle from Michigan. Number 6, the Raiders grabbed Jahdae Barron to upset Walt, cornerback / all-around secondary weapon from Texas. 7, the Jets got Armand Membu, tackle from Missouri. 8, the Panthers selected Jalen Walker, edge rusher, hybrid from Georgia. Number 9, the Saints stopped the slide of Shedeur Sanders, quarterback from Colorado. And then number 10, we just gave the Chicago Bears, Ashton Genty, Boise State running back.
All right, man. Niners up on the clock here at pick 11, suddenly with major needs up and down the roster. Not major needs up and down the roster. They got some replacements, but certainly the defensive line needs a lot of reinforcements.
Yeah, I mean, pretty major needs. Yeah, definitely. I think defensive line is by far their biggest need, but you could point to a bunch of other spots where the 49ers have some needs as well. Defensive line, I think, is where it makes the most sense. Like if you look in this draft, I think there's a ton of talented defensive linemen available, whether it's the next wave of edge rushers, Mike Green from Marshall, the guys you mentioned, Shamar Stewart, Michael Williams, Texas A&M, Georgia, respectively. Walter Nolan, the kind of analysis on him is a little all over the place. He has one of the broadest ranges. There are people that think he's a top 10 draft pick. There are people that think he's a second-round player. Kenneth Grant, I think, is kind of in a similar vein, like not in terms of player style, but in terms of the spread on where people think he could go. I think his floor is a little bit higher, bottom of the first round, but there are people that want to push him higher and higher. So I think it's one of those defensive linemen for the 49ers.
Yeah, completely agree. Definitely defensive line. I think Ezeraku from Boston College is getting more buzz. I think a lot of that is based off of however people want to weigh Mike Green, James Pierce, some of their off field on the edge. Michael Williams from Georgia isn't exactly as freaky as a Shamar Stewart, right? So they all have as I said all along, every edge kind of has a yeah, but right. This guy's good, but he's small. This guy's great, but off field and competition. This guy's good, but he's not explosive, whatever it might be. Or this guy's good, but he's not productive. He's a good athlete, not productive. I think it's one of those defensive linemen, though, somewhere on the defensive line for the Niners.
Yeah, I'm going to take the guy whose scary thing is the least scary to me and the one who's been the most productive and grab Mike Green from Marshall. Like that guy, absurd.
Have we done this yet? I don't think we've had Mike Green to the Niners. I think we've had Michael Williams. We've had Kelvin Banks at tackle, guard/tackle. Don't think we've gone the Mike Green route yet in any of our mocks. I like
it. And I mean, he's been insanely productive. Obviously, one of the questions with him is, but it was at Marshall. Like, when did he do it against, at a higher level of competition? Well, he did do it at the Senior Bowl. He's been good against good competition. I'm not hugely concerned by that.
No, I mean, Mike Green with Nick Bosa, fantastic edge rush presence right there. So, by the way, Dallas, man, if they hadn't traded for Joe Milton, they could have been trading up for Shadur Sanders, man. Really, really make the story great. Cowboys here at 12. Where are they going to go?
I mean, it's kind of funny, but like from Dallas's perspective, I do think that's a great trade. I mean, Milton looked spectacular in that one game. Now it's one game.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But in terms of what they gave up to get him, I would definitely, that's a really intriguing backup for them now.
Absolutely.
I don't understand why the Patriots made that trade, but from Dallas's perspective, it's a really nice move.
So Dallas, all the edge rushers that we just talked about, I think are potentially in play there for Dallas. I think receiver is in play. We've given them Matthew Golden a few different times. I don't think there's any slowdown on that type of buzz of Matthew Golden being wide receiver 1, Teterow and McMillan falling. I think that he could be the first receiver off the board, and who the Cowboys look for at 12.
Yeah, Dallas is a team that typically drafts for need, right? And Jerry Jones has effectively articulated as much. They don't think that free agency is a place you fill needs. They believe the draft is, and they've done that previously. And sometimes it puts you in a bind where you got to go chase specific players to fill specific needs, like Tyler Guyton, because you needed a left tackle. You look at the team, you're like, well, where are their most acute needs? CeeDee Lamb is great as a receiver. They definitely need another starting receiver, another number 2 right now. They've got Jalen Tolbert, Jalen Brooks, Jonathan Mingo, Ryan Flournoy, Kevontae Turpin, who they re-signed. Like this, they need a secondary weapon to CeeDee Lamb. So that would put them in the wide receiver market at 12. I think any wide receiver is a bit of a reach. Defensive line, they re-signed Osa Odigizua. You've got Micah Parsons, who they're trying to re-sign. Outside of those two, the cupboard is pretty bare. Marshawn Nealand is a young player. They're probably not, going to give up on yet, but there's an absence of like impact playmakers beside those two guys at the moment. So any defensive lineman, I think, is definitely on the table. Linebacker maybe with Demarion Overshown, his injury, Jack Sanborn comes in, but I would say it's basically force wide receiver or running back at 12, or grab the best defensive lineman on the board.
Yeah, we talk about Dallas maybe going running back and a Marion Hampton. I don't see them doing it. I just don't see Dallas doing that. I know people like to make the Cowboys the butt of jokes and Jerry Jones and what have you for some of their team building decisions, but they're pretty good in the draft. Not only picking good players, but do they force needs sometimes? Absolutely. But I think they're also going to look at those needs and value them properly. And so I do believe the conclusion you came to, I think it's the best edge or the best receiver. So whether it's Teterow and McMillan or Matthew Golden, whether it's Michael Williams or Shamar Stewart, I think that's where they end up going here. Maybe. So Jihad Campbell's he's one of the big wild cards to me, just because he's probably the best 3-down linebacker in this draft, maybe by a mile, with some pass rush skills that you could talk yourself into, right? He's the wild card that I think a lot of teams can talk themselves into in the top 15, even with some of those other positions. Because every time we say this edge has this, but, and this is a running back or whatever, Campbell doesn't have a bunch of those. It's like, this is the best linebacker. Next linebacker might not come off the board until pick 50. So the scarcity aspect of the 3-down linebacker does put Jihad Campbell, I think, in the mix for a whole bunch of different teams. I'm not saying here necessarily with the Cowboys, but they're at least, I think, having that discussion.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's possible. One more wild card I would throw out there is and you'll hate this for multiple reasons, but
Walt just did it. I know where you're going.
He did. I think that Dallas is a sneaky landing spot for Tyler Warren. If they think that he is a legitimate star tight end, they've got Jake Ferguson reaching the end of his contract. You've got Lou Schoonmaker, who they drafted a couple of years ago in the second round. Neither one of those guys, they've been solid. Like neither one of them are bad players, but neither one of them are difference makers either. Each one of them, I think, has a career yards per route run figure of like 1.5, which is, again, it's fine. It's middle of the road. But Tyler Warren could be a difference-making tight end. And if you think he's that, it's certainly on the table, I think, at 12 as a discussion.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm back and forth on Warren. I don't detest it. He's the best 3-down tight end, I think, in this draft. I thought our friend Nate Tice, though, had a really detailed breakdown of Tyler Warren and Colston Loveland. He came to slightly different conclusions. I don't want to spoil the whole thing, but maybe I did. But he did a really detailed breakdown of those two as a 1-2. And I think I've got this perception that Tyler Warren, and I think that my belief is he's the best blocker. He's the best all-around tight end in this draft. Nate might disagree, but it's close. My issue, I think, is the positional value of that versus edge or receiver and some of the other options that are on the board in the top 15 and the teams that need them until maybe the Colts, where you can more easily slot the tight end in and feel good about it.
Yeah. And again, it's the problem of sort of approaching the draft in the way Dallas typically does, which is to fill needs. It's not the biggest need you have, but it might be a natural fit. So it's like, even independent of, do we think that Tyler Warren is enough of an upgrade over Schoonmaker and Ferguson? It's like, yeah, but can we also take him whilst passing up, the best wide receiver or running back or defensive lineman on the board? Like, it's that as well. And so I think it's probably unlikely they go, but I think it's a sneaky spot where if they did it, it wouldn't shock me.
All right, man. Where do you want to go for the Cowboys then?
I think we got to go not tight end. I think we got to go defensive lineman for them. I think it's the biggest need they have still. Wide receiver is a big need as well, but I'm comfortable with that group in the second or third or mid rounds. I think they need to grab a defensive lineman.
Are you about to click Kenneth Grant? Because we've said this before. I hear the fans. I hear them right now. Please, no, not another Michigan defensive tackle. We just took Mozzie Smith. He's not done anything in 2 years. Kenneth Grant, completely different player, though. They've needed the true big-bodied nose tackle for, 10 years now?
Yeah, of which Mozzie Smith was supposed to be that guy, but they then made him shed a bunch of weight.
What do you think?
I like Kenneth Grant here. Look, I think we're all falling into this world of like trapping. We're doing it again. We're trapping Kenneth Grant in the role that I don't think he necessarily belongs in. Like, I actually saw it articulate. Like, a guy was talking about this as a negative. We may have been one of Bob McGinn's, anonymous scouting reports where they just blast players nonstop for no particularly good reason. But the guy, whatever the scouting report was like using as a negative where Kenneth Grant, he wins too many blocks by shooting the gap. You're like, yeah, but those are like good plays. Like, why are we? That's not a problem. Like, that's there. He's like, you see, he gets too high. Like, now he does get too high sometimes, but they're like, this is not good holding the point play, right? He's shooting a gap and destroying the play in the backfield. Can't have that as a nose tackle. That's not what you're supposed to be doing. You stand there and occupy two big bodies and like it, right? I think we're trapping, like we're falling into this trap again of saying, because Kenneth Grant is 330, 340, he must be a 2-down run stuffing nose tackle. Whereas actually all of his best plays come by using quickness and moves and penetrating into the backfield despite that size.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you on that. I think I would go edge though for them more than Mozzie still look, it's your draft. You do what you want. Osa Odighizuwa is back. Mozzie Smith is still there heading into year 3. When you're talking about the need pick, I think they're going to see the need on the edge where DeMarcus Lawrence is out and they brought back Odighizuwa and they're going to say, okay, it's Marshawn Nealon, last year's second rounder. Is he the starter, or do we want to bring in more competition here?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a need either way. Like, you need basically just pick your favorite /best defensive lineman, and there's a fit for him on this team.
What are you gonna do, Sam? What are you gonna do?
I'm going to give them Kenneth Grant. I don't care about the Michigan helmet scouting thing.
Oh, I don't either. I'm preemptively yelling at the fans who are going to scout. They're going to position and helmet scout and say, no, can't have another Michigan defensive tackle. So the Dolphins are up at 13, and some of the news that came out this weekend really impacts the draft. Teron Armstead, starting left tackle, has retired, announced his retirement here. Outstanding player. Do you have a favorite Teron Armstead moment? Because I do.
No.
He had one of the best blocks I've ever seen years ago with the Saints. He was, when we use the term developmental tackle, it rarely works, but that was Armstead, right? He was a bit of a project coming out with just incredible physical traits, and he became one of the best tackles in the league. He took, I think it was Kendall Langford, maybe 280, 290 pounder, took him off his feet at the point of attack. I remember texting, we were doing PFF grading at the time. I was sending notes around. I'm like, how high can I grade this block? This is the best block I've ever seen. He was physically moving. You just don't see that at the NFL level. Armstead was a special player who battled injuries. And even when he was on the roster, we were talking about, well, the Dolphins need to future-proof this position. They knew it last year when they drafted Patrick Paul in the second round at tackle out of Houston. So he's either the replacement now or they're going for a more specific replacement right now with Teron Armstead announcing his retirement.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Patrick Paul is he's the current starter effectively. So the question is, do they think that they need a new starter at that spot, or are they comfortable rolling into the season with him? Even with Patrick Paul, I mean, Austin Jackson, you can argue easily needs to be replaced at right tackle. So even if you think Patrick Paul is good, you can tackle, I think, is still on the board because you can easily argue right tackle needs to be upgraded as well, as does left guard. Either way, I think their biggest need was offensive line, which only got more acute with the retirement of Teron Armstead. Where is he? Central Arkansas? Arkansas Pine Bluff was where he went to college.
Pine Bluff.
That's a small school.
What year was he drafted? 12 or 13?
2013.
13, yeah. The horrible 2013 draft class where Eric Fisher was the number one overall pick. And I mean, when you look back at how bad that class was, is Armstead a top 5 player from that draft? I mean, it was pretty bad overall.
Yeah, probably.
Good player. Good player. I won't exactly pour one out for him. That's reserved for the Joe Thomases of the world, I would say.
But Lane Johnson is the best player from that draft.
Lane is, yeah. He went 4 overall. But yeah, it was rough. Was it Eric Fisher, Luke Jokel, Deion Jordan? Top 3 picks? And Lane Johnson?
Yep.
Mingo was 6.
Yep.
Who was 5? Doesn't matter. Let's go.
Ziggy Ansah.
Ziggy was 5. Wow.
Yeah, it's a weird draft class.
That was pre-PFF college days, so that was more like we just kind of watch some film, have some takes. There was no grading or data to lead on at the time. I mean,
there were some, just like every draft, I think there were some star players to come from it. They just didn't come at the top of the first round where they normally come. Like Travis Kelce was in that draft, as was Travis Frederick at the bottom of the first round. Like a lot of genuine all-time players came from that draft. They just didn't come from the first round.
That was the AJ Jenkins year too? Or was he 12? He was 2012.
Yeah, no, previous year.
All right. What do you want to do with the Dolphins at 13 here?
I mean, so they need an offensive line. They need offensive line. I think the more versatility the offensive lineman gives them, the better. So, I mean, Kelvin Banks still makes a ton of sense to me. Like, he gives you left guard, left tackle, and right tackle flexibility, I think.
I've loved that fit for a while, and I love it even more for the Dolphins at 13. I am honestly curious, Sam, with Membu, I think, being discussed in the top 10, if there's a trade up here. Remember tackles. Remember the Bucs were trying to trade up for Tristan Wirfs for a while in the 2020 draft. They couldn't do it. Wirfs fell to 13, but tackle. We tend to underrate how high offensive tackles are going to go in the draft. Will the Dolphins be content sitting at 13 and waiting to see if a guy like Kelvin Banks is still on the board? They would have to jump maybe the Niners if they were trying to get him.
Yeah, or they just think that, they're comfortable with sort of sitting there and playing the game that the edge rushers will come off the board. Right now, Banks is ranked 13th overall on the consensus big board. So it's literally it's his draft position that they're this big is.
Yeah. So is that where you're going? Kelvin Banks?
Yep. Done.
Like and then Tyler Warren to the Colts.
Yep. The first of the run them in draft picks is Mason Graham to the Jags. If that is a possibility, the second of them is Tyler Warren to the Colts. Fills their tight end need. Makes a ton of sense. I mean, the only question there is if they believe. I mean, there are people that have Colson Loveland as tight end 1 that think he's the best tight end in this draft. Potentially slightly more dynamic as a pass catcher. If they believe he's the more important player or the bigger upside or whatever, if they believe he's the play, I think they could go there. But I think if both tight ends are on the board, I'd be amazed if the Colts didn't pick one.
Yeah, I love the fit for the Colts, not just because they have such a need there. I think that the physicality, the blocking ability of Tyler Warren, I am intrigued by that with presumably an Anthony Richardson-led offense with Jonathan Taylor at running back with the pass game weapons that they already have. And as much as I've downplayed maybe the tight end class, I'm not high on the tight end class. I don't think it's as deep as people have said. I don't think Warren shouldn't be discussed as Brock Bowers, guy that just broke all the tight end rookie receiving records. That's my opinion there. But I also think he's one of the few, hey, you trust him as the best all-around tight end in this class. So that I get, because there's no good blockers don't come out of college all that often at tight end, guys that can do everything. So I think that's more Tyler Warren's skill set or his selling point more than, hey, he's going to go catch 100 passes like Brock Bowers just did.
Nobody is talking about him as Brock Bowers, though, as far as I can see.
No, but it's more about like putting him in as a top 10, like, oh, he's got to be a top 10 player. And of course, it's always relative to the draft class. I'm not even comparing him as far as Bowers' actual draft position or anything. But I think Warren's more of your classic mid to late first round type of prospect rather than we need to think about him at 5. That's what I'm talking about. Even in this class, I'm not considering him at 5 with all the other players on the board. That's more what I'm talking about. Whereas Bowers you could talk yourself, like if Bowers was in this class, you're having the Bowers conversation at 5 if you're the Jags. You're saying, is this guy good enough? Whereas you're not having that. You shouldn't be having that conversation with Tyler Warren.
Yeah. I mean, I hate to agree with Walt ever, but he his point in the chat is legit. He's not Brock Bowers, which I don't think anyone is saying he is, but literally every time you watched a Penn State game, he was the best player on that field. And I love it. That jumped out even to people who didn't like, I don't watch college football. Typically I don't do draft stuff until after the NFL season. Anytime I watched a Penn State game, he was clearly the best player on that field. That's legit.
The USC game was one of the most ridiculous things I've ever seen. He had like 19 catches or whatever. I mean, he was the dude, man. I mean, I loved watching how they used him. But, yeah, I don't know how much some of that's projectable as far as the NFL goes. Go ahead.
Of the Colts, so the Colts used a bunch of different tight ends last season. Do you know who led the team in receptions from the tight end position? And then this follow-up, how many receptions did they have?
Was it Will Mallory?
It was not. He was, in fact, 4 of 4.
They were all hurt, right? They were all hurt. So who was it?
It was Kylan Granson.
Oh, yeah.
Who led the team for tight end receptions with 14.
Yeah, so this should be an upgrade.
Yeah.
I like it. Warren to the Colts. Falcons at 15. Pick your favorite defensive player here.
Yep. Pick your favorite defensive player. I think they're still the only question for Atlanta is, and this is really hard to gauge, like what do they think they have amongst the players that they drafted last year when they started spamming defensive line because they didn't grab one at number 8 overall? Like, what is the aggregate collection of Braylon Trice, and even going back to some younger players beyond that, but like Braylon Trice, Arnold Ebiketie, Rook Ororo, Brandon Dorlus, all those guys together, what do they think they have? Because outside of those guys, it's David Onyemata, who's pretty good, Morgan Fox, Leonard Floyd they signed as a stopgap. It's still a group that needs desperate help.
These next three teams, Sam, Falcons, Cardinals, and Bengals, all seem like they should be good defensive line fits. Maybe the Cardinals are the team that's done the most on the defensive line, so the need is less acute than it's been. They all feel like Jihad Campbell could be in play. So they're defensive line needy, but also just defense needy generally. And I'd be curious to know if they would go with the top linebacker, and maybe even over some of these edge rushers that are available. I would still probably lean defensive line, but like the Cardinals in particular, we'll talk about them in a second. I think Campbell starts to become in play. And then the Bucs at 19 has been the most common place for Campbell. I just think he's in the mix here for these next 4 picks.
I mean, I think, yeah, if defensive line is the obvious need for Atlanta, if they don't go defensive line, though, I think they could talk themselves into a bunch of different spots. Like you could plug essentially the top player on the board into most spots for Atlanta. Like theoretically, they could use another wide receiver alongside Drake London, right? If you believe that the top wide receiver on the board fits that spot, wide receiver at 15 wouldn't be crazy.
No, they have Mooney. They're not. I don't think they're not gonna look at receiver.
I'm just saying you could easily argue that wide receiver 2/1 for Atlanta needs to be upgraded. If you think that guy's on the board, he fits in seamlessly. You can also argue cornerback 2 for Atlanta needs to be upgraded with Mike Hughes being there. The top corner on the board could fit in. You could argue that safety needs to be upgraded with Justin Simmons moving on and Jordan Fuller being in there alongside Jesse Bates. You could argue that Malachi Starks could be drafted there. And as you said, Jihad Campbell, like you can plug effectively the best player on the board at most spots into this team and they would fit.
Yeah, I disagree on the offensive part. A couple of those because they do have starters locked up. I mean, I really think it's going to be either defensive line and then it's would you consider a linebacker because it's the top guy on the board in Campbell. I get the cornerback thing. Like if you love Will Johnson and even though Hughes is there, is he going to keep you from drafting Will Johnson? I don't know, but this is edge for me, man, for Atlanta. It's probably where they end up going. Michael Williams is still on the board. Shamar Stewart's still on the board. It's about where they're expected to go, if not even lower. I could see them going defensive line once again.
Yeah.
Because that's what we've done every single time. Derek Harmon could be in play here. A bunch of them could be in play.
Yeah. Any of the defensive linemen, I think. And again, the Walter Nolan question, like where are you on Walter Nolan? If you're one of the teams that thinks he's a top 10 pick, this starts to become really good value. If you think he's a second rounder, you're looking at half a dozen guys before you're considering him.
I see the trade down suggestion too. I mean, yeah, like it's understood. I would always like to trade down. We would always consider the trade down. Do you have any, as GM of all 32 teams here, Sam, do you have anyone that would want to trade up for any particular player?
No, I think that's the problem. Like,
yeah,
the next team you would say would really be interested in a strong defensive line board would be Green Bay at 23, and that's not really their style.
I mean, Denver's a team at 20 that we've said, yeah, they got pretty good roster, not a ton of needs. Would they trade up? You know, if you feel pretty good about your roster, you're more willing to trade up to go get one player rather than sitting and waiting for the draft to come to you.
Yeah, I mean, maybe Detroit at 28 would love a strong edge rusher board, but to the point where they would trade up this far, again, don't really see it, but it's possible.
Oh, that's good. We should do a whole video on that for Lions fans. Would the Lions trade up with all these edge rushers on the board here? Because they could get, I mean, if there's one that they love, maybe like Michael Williams. If they love Michael Williams, who, by the way, Nate Tice had as number 1 on his board coming into the season, like he's got those types of skills. Would the Lions go make a power move? They moved from 30 to 12 that one time for Jameson Williams.
Right. Well, let's see what let's plug it in. What would that do?
Oh, we're gonna do it right now.
Well, maybe. Like, what would they need to give up to make it happen?
Probably a 3. Next year's 2.
3? I think they need to give up more than that.
More than that, right? Next year's 2, maybe.
Let's just do the down and dirty Jimmy Johnson trade chart and see what it's worth.
You're just gonna pull up the trade chart right now, huh?
1050 points. Detroit at 28 is worth 660, so they got to find 400 from somewhere, which is the equivalent of this year's 46th overall pick, which would be, I mean, they're talking about next year's first if they want to get up to this.
Okay, yeah. This is a Marcus Davenport trade.
Yeah,
I don't think the Lions would do that. They're smarter than that.
Yeah, I don't think they would either. But it's a team. You could talk yourself into that aggression if you're Detroit.
That'd be a power move. Yeah, I mean, because part of that is Detroit saying we've drafted so well right now. Not that you don't want to draft well, but like we just have fewer spots in the coming years. Assuming that they tie up a bunch of their good players. All right, man, we got to make a pick for the Falcons here. We're on pace for a 3-hour show, which might be fine to go for 3 hours. Done it before.
Perfect. So I think they could. I doubt they would. So I think that Atlanta sticks here and just picks the best, what they think is the best or the least scary edge rusher, Michael Williams. Georgia stays home.
I like it. Michael Williams.
Arizona, pretty simple. Defensive help, any level. Pick your favorite.
For Arizona, have they done enough on the defensive line? So I think corner is in play. I see some people asking about guard. Personally, I wouldn't want to take a guard here with some of the other players on the board, but understand the question.
I mean, they've upgraded the defensive line. You still don't love the group, right? Like previously, it literally read like a second string defensive line in a preseason game. Now with, Dalvin Tomlinson and Josh Sweat and Baron Browning, like at least there are guys there that do belong starting in the NFL. But I think there's still space for another edge rusher and another defensive tackle.
No, I agree. You can still go there. Maybe they bring the Barbarian back coming off the injury. We haven't had a receiver come off the board yet, Sam.
Correct.
Are they in the Matthew Golden? If they think he's a true 4.2, 4.3 type of guy, speed receiver next to Marvin Harrison Jr. and Michael Wilson?
I mean, maybe. I think their defensive needs are too acute.
I agree. I would go defense here for Arizona. Well, the way the board is falling here.
Yeah. I think you can go either edge rusher or defensive tackle still. This would be an interesting Walter Nolan landing spot.
I already mentioned Jahad Campbell should be considered.
Yeah.
The next few picks, I think he should be considered.
Yeah, I think he will be. But I don't think he would go here.
I've given them Shamar Stewart. I've given them Shamar Stewart a couple different times. There's some similarities to Josh Sweat as the athletic projection. I don't think Sweat had the same type of. No, few people have the same type of workout as Stewart, but kind of like Sweat's career arc is similar to what you might expect from a Shamar Stewart. Hey, 3-4 years from now, things really fall into place.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Walter Nolan. I think that's the pick for them.
All right. Walter Nolan, interior pass rusher for the Cardinals, puts the Bengals up on the clock. People are already asking for Shamar Stewart here for Cincinnati.
How good would you feel about that if you're the Bengals?
What, Stewart?
Yeah.
I mean, given I don't know how they feel exactly about Myles Murphy, but he hasn't exactly panned out through 2 years.
Right.
And you're talking about a high ceiling, low floor, high ceiling guy in Stewart. So he's not really low floor because I think he's a good run defender. Right. So it's kind of weird because the ceiling could be through the roof, but I think at worst, you're probably getting a guy that's kind of disruptive against the run and could figure it out. So he's not an awful pick here, but if the goal is, hey, we need to rush the passer better, that part is risky. I think with Shamar Stewart, is he going to be able to do that consistently enough?
Stewart is still ranked pretty highly on the consensus board. He's 14, so he's ranked ahead of Michael Williams and Mike Green, and some of these other guys as well. Like his sort of consensus board ranking has stayed pretty strong.
Chat brings up Malachi Starks here too. I mean, that's where the Bengals defense is. I think Campbell could be in the mix. I think Starks could be in the mix because at every level they've had questions, or they have, they could use a better linebacker situation, especially if Pratt's out. Safety's been an issue since Jesse Bates has left, and we know that the pass rush issues have been there.
Yeah, they could go anywhere on defense, and they have a space for a corner. I think is the least likely, but it wouldn't be insane if they drafted a corner either. Like any defender would make sense for them.
Guard as well. I mean, if they say, hey, we'll take the first guard off the board, it's Gray Zabel, it's Tyler Booker.
Screw defense.
Yeah. They're also, I don't think they're not a team that's going to trade down a ton. They usually make their picks. They'll move a little bit, but less than other teams. They usually just make their picks where they are. But I mean, they would be great. Every team's a candidate to trade down. But if they move down 7 or 8 spots, they probably have similar options, that fit their needs.
Yeah, which again needs the trade partner. Same conversations before. Is it basically just Detroit still?
Yeah. What do you want to do, man?
I think they used the pick. I think they grabbed their favorite / least scary defensive line.
Harmon? Derek Harmon's in the mix there.
Yeah. So their defensive tackle situation is interesting because you've got BJ Hill and TJ Slayton, and then the young guys from last year. So Chris Jenkins Jr. Then remember they got McKinley Jackson as well late in that draft. So you got a ton of guys that do not rush the passer effectively.
Yeah. And Harmon's the opposite. He's not an awful run defender, but he's a pass rusher, right? He's a get after the quarterback type. We'll assume they figure it out with Trey Hendrickson at some point, but
right,
certainly need an edge opposite him. Or they, it depends on if they still believe in Miles Murphy. And I'm not closing the book on him, but you're heading into year 3, and even if you think Murphy's good, you could still use another edge rusher.
Yeah. I mean, he's reached the point now where you're not banking on him. Like, even if you believed in him at the time, you haven't seen enough now to be confident in it next year.
Yeah.
I think Derek Harmon makes sense.
Derek Harmon, I like it. I think I've seen that. I've seen Harmon, seen Nolan, seen a few different. So we got you have 3 defensive tackles now going in the top 17. Yeah. So this is where I would stop the draft and say, look at this trend. Look at this going on. Defensive tackles going everywhere here. No, 4 in the top 17, which is possible given the market explosion.
2 Michigan and then the other 2 guys.
So now Seattle's sitting here at pick 18 in an offseason where they've traded DK Metcalf and no receiver has been drafted. We've changed, Sam. We used to take receivers early all the time.
Yeah, but they could definitely use one. I mean, they bring in Cooper Kupp. They've done some work to try and backfill that. So it's not a desperate move. You've got JSN, obviously, who they think is their number 1. You've got Cooper Kupp to come in and add some reinforcements there. And then you've got like the lower, Marquez Valdez-Scantling for a year. Jake Bobo is the sort of red zone threat. So you can definitely plug a wide receiver into this group and say, yeah, that's a huge upgrade and potential need. But all this like messing around with wide receiver and quarterback, like the biggest need in this team is still the interior of the offensive line again. And I think it's a more acute need than it was before you change quarterback, because I think Darnold is more vulnerable to that interior pressure than Geno Smith was.
You think they change? So are you trying to do this as GM? Or are you going to predict what John Schneider's going to do? Are you going to predict, hey, he's going to change. He's going to take the top guy? Because it's not like Quentin Nelson's not available here. All the guards we're talking about, Gray Zabel, like I don't even know if the NFL is really going to value him in the top 20. And Tyler Booker had one of the worst workouts we've seen, which does kind of matter for guard historically. The places where he was weak does matter for interior offensive line projection. He reminds me a little bit of Osiris Torrance from Buffalo, starting guard for Buffalo, who's been okay. That's a second-round player. So if you're going to squeeze a guard fit in here, I don't think Seattle's going to see the value at 18. There's no slam dunk guard. There's no like JPJ could have gone at this point last year. Jackson Powers Johnson, and it would have been fine. We did that a few times for Seattle, and he was that good for the Raiders, but he even went in the second.
Yeah, particularly for a team that doesn't like and self-proclaimed does not like drafting interior offensive linemen in the first round because they think they can come back later and do it. If it was me, if it was me, I would run the card in for Gray Zabel and just make that pick. Like I think it's too clear and obvious for them. Now I don't have any faith whatsoever in them doing that. And as you said, they have multiple 2s to come back and get them. I do wonder though, this would be another interesting trade down spot. Like would a team, so previously it's like which edge rusher is a team coming up for? I mean, at this point, if a team wants Tetero McMillan, if a team thinks McMillan is the guy, you probably want to get ahead of Tampa Bay or Denver. Like you want to get to this spot or Pittsburgh even with the uncertain long-term aspect of their receiver room. But like, this would be a target spot if you liked McMillan.
Or Golden. There's enough.
Or Golden.
I mean, it's kind of like last year, there was enough rumblings that, hey, people like Malik Neighbors more than Marvin Harrison Jr. And it was, I think it was true. Marvin Harrison Jr. went ahead of Neighbors, but I think it was true. I mean, there's enough buzz around people like Matthew Golden, maybe not enough to trade up, but yeah, there's some intriguing receiver fits now over these next few picks. If there's one that you love, where Seattle could be a trade partner.
Like, would the Chargers covet the top receiver left on the board and come up for him?
That. Chargers
1, 2,
go
3,
get
4 spots.
Chargers have a lot of picks in this draft, don't they? Go get
Let me figure out what that trade looks like.
Oh, I would love McMillan to the Chargers with Ladd and Herbert, Quentin Johnston.
All right, this pick is worth 900. They are at 780. They need to find 120, which is only worth like the 95th pick in this draft.
Low 3.
I like Chargers.
The discussion is fun. This is fun.
So they pick 86. So it's really just their third, and if they want to get a pick back, give them 230, whatever.
I like it.
Done.
Chargers coming up to get Teteroa McMillan.
Well, so yes, done. That's done. Chargers are picking. They're drafting. They're taking a receiver. Which receiver are they taking?
I mean, I like McMillan certainly better than the other options. That's me.
Yeah, I mean, I think McMillan is definitely a better receiver than Matthew Golden. I don't really look, I'm relatively low on McMillan, certainly compared with Trevor and the PFF big board, but relative to a lot of other people as well. I do think that he's better than Golden, though. I also wonder, like, this gives him obviously the top receiver on the board, whether it's McMillan, whether it's Matthew Golden. It also, though, gives you, it gives you number 2 in terms of running back, Omarion Hampton or Colston Loveland, the Michigan tight end. Like, it puts them in position to get any of those guys.
But they traded up to get a guy that's supposed to be, they wouldn't trade up to just get Hampton, I don't think. I mean, if they wanted Hampton, look, the Chargers the front office, Joe Hortitz coming from Baltimore. I don't think they're trading up for a running back. I don't even think they're going to consider the running back in the first round, to be honest, in this draft, given their need at receiver and tight end. I don't even think that's an option. They traded up to get McMillan in this scenario, in my opinion.
I mean, or Loveland. They have a need a tight end still.
But if they were trying to jump, say, the Broncos or the Bucs could use the tight end. Broncos could use either the tight end or the running back. So if they were trying to jump those teams, I get it. I think it's for Teteroa McMillan, though, in this point. That would be an awesome play for the Chargers, man.
Yeah, I mean, it makes the most sense. So let's do that.
That's why we did it. Bucs at 19. What are you doing?
Well, this is your most obvious Jihad Campbell landing spot, I think.
Yeah. We've done it a bunch. Do we want to mix it up? I don't know. It's up to you.
Well, what else would they do? So again, this is another team that's in pretty good shape, and they need sort of number 2, number 3 at a lot of things. They're a defensive line team still. You can talk yourself into
Starks.
What's that?
Malachi Starks.
Yeah, I mean, you can talk yourself into Starks. I think that's a smaller need than maybe any of the other ones we would be talking about. But they could use an edge rusher. Hassan Reddick's a short-term thing, and who knows if he's even going to make an impact based off what he did last year. They've got Yaya Diaby, Anthony Nelson, Chris Braswell. If they found a good edge rusher in the first round, he would immediately step in as number 2/3 on this team. Their defensive tackles are probably set with Vita Vea and Kalijah Kancey. I mean, you could talk yourself into corner with Zion McCollum and Jamel Dean. That where they are in terms of development / contracts, I think you could talk yourself into a long-term play at corner, like Will Johnson. If you think he's the best corner in this draft, that would make some sense. So I think they could go a number of different ways, actually.
But at the end of the day, it is a lot cleaner probably taking Campbell.
Yeah,
been talking through
that's a reason it's the chalky pick.
Yeah, I like it. Once we once we discovered it a few weeks ago, it's like, yeah, this does make a lot of sense. Like I said, though, I think I could see teams 10 through 19 thinking about Campbell, weighing him against some of those other defensive prospects.
Yeah, I mean, starts right away, becomes a sort of spiritual successor to Levante David. Just makes a ton of sense.
All right, man, that's the Bucs at 19. Broncos now up at pick 20.
Similar story in terms of a roster that's all of a sudden in really good shape. They've got their sort of picks, their needs are kind of luxury needs, right? Like wide receiver 2/1, depending on what you think Courtland Sutton actually is. Running back, are they in the Marion Hampton sweepstakes? Also potentially tight end. I don't know if Evan Engram is keeping you away from drafting Colson Loveland if you loved him, but it's the kind of luxury positions.
Pick the best player, man. I mean, I keep giving them a pass rusher here. Love giving them a pass rusher. I don't care how many sacks they had last year, but just future-proofing the position. You can never have too many. Nick Benito's going to get paid here soon. It just gives you a little bit of security and depth, and I love edge rush. I like the receivers that you just scrolled past, too, thinking about whether it's Luther Burden or Emeka Ibuka. I like those guys more than Matthew Golden, but, realistically, if the NFL's higher on Golden, added another player like that. He's a good – I don't want to call him a speed guy. I mean, he could be a nice, dependable route runner for this offense who might also have 4.3 speed. I don't know.
Golden's actually a nice fit here in terms of what he brings to the table. Again, forget the speed thing. He's a great route runner. He's got some sort of X/Z on or off the ball flexibility. I don't think he's necessarily, pegged in at either one of them. I think he would immediately be the number 2 here. Starts to become quite a well-rounded receiving core. Courtland Sutton, Vele, Marvin Mims, the long shot of Troy Franklin developing as a deep threat, and then Golden bringing what he brings to the table. That I kind of like that, actually. Do it, man.
I would just say I also think I like Riley Moss, but I think corner should still be in play here for Denver. If Will Johnson's on the board, and I like this cornerback class, especially picks 20 through 40. Really like it, and I think they should consider that with Surtain on one side. You have a chance to really make sure that cornerback 2 is good, have competition there. I think they should at least consider it. So that's through pick 20 there. I'm going to let you recap it in a minute, but Check the Mic's brought to you by our friends over at Timeline. You get 10% off your order of MitoPure at timeline.com by using code Check the Mic at checkout. MitoPure is a supplement that can help you because it encourages cellular renewal. It works by promoting an essential cellular cleanup process that clears out dysfunctional mitochondria, aka your cell's battery packs. There are no supplements on the market that have better clinical research shown to be effective at targeting the effects of age-related cellular decline. With regular use, you'll see and feel the difference in the form of improved energy levels, better workouts, faster recovery, more endurance, and more. In fact, MitoPure is shown to deliver double-digit increases in muscle strength and endurance without a change in exercise. Awaken the strength, power, resilience already in you with the first and only supplement clinically proven to rejuvenate health at the cellular level. Again, Timeline's offering 10% off your order of MitoPure. Go to timeline.com/checkthemic. That's TIMELINE.com/checkthemic.
All right, recap. Pick number 11, the 49ers grabbed Mike Green, the edge rusher from Marshall. At number 12, the Dallas Cowboys grabbed defensive tackle Kenneth Grant from Michigan. 13, the Dolphins grabbed offensive lineman, let's call him Kelvin Banks Jr. from Texas. Number 14, the Colts ran in the card for Tyler Warren, the tight end from Penn State. 15, the Atlanta Falcons grabbed Michael Williams, the edge rusher from Georgia. 16, the Arizona Cardinals grabbed defensive tackle Walter Nolan from Ole Miss. 17, the Cincinnati Bengals grabbed Derek Harmon, the defensive tackle from Oregon. Pick number 18, the Chargers traded up to grab Tedero McMillan, the wide receiver from Arizona. 19, the Tampa Bay Bucs grabbed Jihad Campbell, the linebacker from Alabama. And then number 20, we just gave Matthew Golden, Texas wide receiver, to the Denver Broncos, putting the Pittsburgh Steelers on the clock at 21.
Are we going quarterback here? Is this the next quarterback option with Jackson Dart?
Well, number one, I think you have to assume Aaron Rodgers is going to be on this team at some point. If he is, I mean, either way, if he isn't, you desperately need a quarterback. You basically just have to take somebody because you put yourself in that position again. You've Kenny Picketed the thing again. If he is, then you're like, is Jackson Dart actually worth a first-round draft pick as the future? And I would say no.
Jalen Milroe's been invited to the draft. Steelers seem to like him as well. Does that mean he's going in the first round? Is there any consideration?
No, they invite people to the draft now. They're not first-round players.
Just throwing that out there. Where do you want to go for the Steelers, man?
I don't think they're taking a quarterback at this spot. So if you're not taking a quarterback, I mean, are they in the running back market? Omarion Hampton, given they moved on from Najee Harris, I still think they need a starting tackle. You seem less sure about that. Malachi Starks fits there.
I'm less sure that they're ready to. They've spent a first round pick on tackles each of the last 2 years. I don't think they're going to do it 3 straight years. I'm not going out on a limb saying I don't think the Steelers are going to go tackle 3 straight years, but 2 of them are plugged in as, penciled in as starters.
Right, but one of them very clearly looks to be a bust. Like, this is like saying, if the picks aren't there and you still have a need, that makes no sense to me. Like, we've done it 2 years in a row. We can't do it 3 years in a row. But one of them isn't good.
Because I don't think they're going to give up on Broderick Jones. Like, he looked bad at times, but year 3 of an offensive lineman's different. There's guys break out, guys improve.
Some of the worst plays of any offensive tackle in the NFL.
I'm aware. That's my line, Sam. I said he's get some of the ugliest offensive line plays I've ever seen. I get it. I'm just saying I don't think they're going to do it again.
Okay.
Anyway, Malachi Starks is interesting. Like, the secondary is interesting here. They bring in 1 year of Darius Slay. Minkah Fitzpatrick is out in the secondary. Deshaun Elliott starting next to him. They brought in Juan Thornhill. Starks or Will Johnson. Any of the next best corner or Starks. Interesting play here.
Yeah.
It sounds like, by the way,
Will Johnson, I think.
Really quick, some of the Bob McGinn quotes. I preface this by saying there's 300 scouts in the NFL. So if you get a quote from 3 of them, the NFL might be higher based off the quotes, might be high on Malachi Starks, seeing him as a guy that, should be a top 15 player. And we consistently see him back end of the first round.
I mean, that's where he is. So he's 21 on the consensus board right now. So that's reasonably high. Where the consensus board is crazy high, not crazy high. Where the consensus board is very high, though, Will Johnson is 12 on the consensus board. And we quite consistently have him slipping down in these mock drafts. He's an interesting player because even if you look at just this PFF grading, 88.2 in 2022, and then these grades in the 70s, in particular, this most recent season before he got hurt, so it wasn't as good. Even passer rating allowed goes from 31 to 53. Generally, it's like, this was not a good season. A lot of people I've seen started to put that down to, well, he was a guy that's just mentally checked out because he knew he was a top pick, right? They won the national title already. He knew he was going to be a future first-round draft pick. He's just like, he's mentally preparing for the draft already. I haven't seen, now in this world of like weird dynamics with NIL and with, draft position, and when do you start protecting yourself? When do you bail? When do you, it's time to look after me, not you. It's bowl games has become acceptable, right? Like, you don't even expect to see these guys in bowl games anymore. But I think more and more you're seeing it become like an acceptable practice or an accepted attitude for these guys to kind of take themselves out earlier. And I wonder if that's extending to like mentally checking out earlier.
Yeah. I mean, he got hurt after. I don't even know how much you weigh his 6 games of performance here. So I wouldn't look too much into the performance. It was only a handful of games. Very good. The bigger issue to me is like, we don't have workout numbers. I thought you were going to say in this world of agents controlling the narrative, we haven't gotten the narrative on Will Johnson being swung positively yet, right? I haven't seen that yet. Maybe it gets there. He's recovering great. He's fine. We had him running 4.38 at our workouts, but we're not going to test, that type of stuff. Waiting for that to come out on Will Johnson to solidify him in the top 15. Love him I love him as the pick here, though, for Pittsburgh, if he's around.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are now sort of explaining away his dip in play as a mental thing rather than a physical thing.
Yeah. Great
I
fit
like
for
him
the
here.
Steelers either way, though. Yeah.
Done.
So Seattle traded down to 22. Going to discuss the same players that they were talking about at 18.
Yeah, well, the only guy that went off the board, well, I guess Matthew Golden as well, but the two of the receivers that they could have been considering, Tedderell McMillan, Matthew Golden, gone. I think this gives them room to just get closer to an offensive lineman they'd be willing to take. To me, trading down from that spot, picking up an extra pick, and still getting Gray Zabel is the move. That's what I would do.
That's what you wanted to do. It's your mock.
That's what I want them to do. I still don't know if they would do it, but I still think that makes a ton of sense.
I think the edge rush depth is also interesting. I think cornerback could be in the mix as well, just because I don't know if Reek Woolen is the long-term option for Mike McDonald's defense. And even if he was, if they had another outside corner with him and with Devin Witherspoon who can move around, and then I'll throw Malachi Starks out there for them as well as a hybrid type of player. Their whole secondary is guys who could play safety, cover the slot. Do you add another one of those guys and just add even more versatility to McDonald's defense? There's a few different intriguing options here for Seattle.
Yeah. I mean, there's a bunch of places they could go. I just think they'd be insane to not draft an offensive lineman at this spot.
All right. I know you've got your heart set on this, so
they just need it. I mean, look, all three of the interior players on this team could be upgraded, and they have Sam Darnold back there now, whose most recent tape was utterly melting down in the face of pressure.
Packers up on the board at pick 23. I know is Shamar Stewart still out there? You haven't picked him yet,
right? He is.
The Packers people seem to love Stewart. The Emeka Ibuka pick is very common for the Packers here.
Really?
So it is. I've seen that a few different times. I try to insulate myself, but I see that one pop up a lot.
What is their okay, so their most likely players according to PFF are James Pierce Jr., the edge rusher from Tennessee, Luther Burden III, the wide receiver from Missouri, Ibuka, as you said, the third most common, then Derek Harmon, who's already gone, Matthew Golden is already gone, and Michael Williams, who have already gone.
Yeah. Shamar Stewart could be the guy, or either of those receivers. Ezeraku, I think edge receiver, both of those options make sense. Then there's corner for them as well, as we've talked about quite a bit. I really think some of those corners should go a little bit higher, especially if they didn't have injuries, but they're all in the second round in consensus board world.
Yeah. Defensive lineman, I think, makes a lot of sense for them. It's like, which is your favorite defensive lineman? But I could definitely, corner is a need as well. I just don't know if you're going to love any corner at 23, possible.
I want to remind, because I get caught up in this myself. We look at, so you're scrolling the PFF board right now. We use the consensus board. If you grab somebody like 30, like Maxwell Hairston's 35 on the consensus board, the cornerback out of Kentucky. This is pick 23. A 12-pick jump from the consensus board isn't even, I don't even want to say it's a reach. It's not necessarily a reach, and it's not uncommon, right? This, like Chop Robinson, we kept putting him last year late first and into the second, and he went at 21. That stuff happens all the time. So you could really look all the way down to 35 or 40 on some of these boards. Trey Amos right there. Saw somebody in the chat mention, like, those are legitimately, should be probably in consideration here at pick 23 for the Packers.
Yeah, anybody in the top 40 picks, maybe on the consensus board, I think is in play here, maybe even beyond that. I mean, you hear this every year that this team only has, 20 first-round grades on players, right? Now, you can argue about whether that's sensible process or not to have every single year 20 first-round prospects when every single year there are 32 first-round players. I'm not, without getting into that now, the point being the pick around now is when you start getting into this world of players are going to get drafted that most people or a lot of people do not have as first-round players, but they're either the first-round player on that team's board or that team ran out of first-round players and this was the next guy up that they liked and fit a position of need.
Right. So I think my point is, this is when I think right around pick 20 or so, things diverge a lot, and it's not going to feel as by the book that we've been playing, reading from, I guess, over these few weeks. So pull from anywhere, Sam. Where do you think the Packers are going to go?
I do like defensive line for them. I think that is an area that they need an investment in. The young guys that they had just did not work out collectively. So I think they're going to go defensive linemen. So let's first of all pull this up. Defensive line. Okay, so Donovan Ezeraku, Boston College; James Pierce, Tennessee; Shamar Stewart, Texas A&M; Nick Scourton, Texas A&M; Darius Alexander, the defensive tackle from Toledo; Landon Jackson, edge from Arkansas; Braden Swinson, the LSU edge. Like, these are all guys I think that it wouldn't be insane if they were drafted here.
Swinson is in the first round. Haven't made that connection yet.
I would not be shocked if Swinson ends up as a first-round player in this draft.
I would be shocked if Stewart doesn't, and we're getting close at pick 23 here. Shamar Stewart.
Yeah. I mean, Stewart he's the top guy on the consensus board, and he makes sense here. It's just, and I mean, I guess it kind of depends how you view the Rashawn Gary thing from Green Bay's perspective. Like, that's a plus potentially in terms of their ability to project him forward.
Yeah, and Gary's been more good than bad. Maybe hasn't gotten the consistency there, but yeah, that's an athletic freak that they drafted and has been pretty decent for them.
All right, done.
There you go. Shamar Stewart to the Packers. Vikings up on the clock here at pick 24. Filled a bunch of their needs during free agency. Running back, offensive line, kind of frees them up a little bit here.
Yeah, interesting spot for them. Like, they don't have that many significant needs. You could definitely plug a starter in a couple of spots, like left guard. Blake Brendel is theoretically the starter. You could easily upgrade on him if you found the guy that you loved. I think theoretically they could use a nose tackle as well, but I don't love any of them at 24. With Kenneth Grant gone, that would be the one guy I think I would consider at that. Linebacker, they're in good shape. I don't love corner. I think that's a risk with Byron Murphy as a slot guy, with Isaiah Rodgers, who they brought in, with Mekhi Blackman coming back off a significant injury. If they love a corner, that would make sense. Starks for value, I wonder if they would grab as a safety, even if, Harrison Smith is still there somehow. Josh Metellus is a really nice, joker in that secondary. Theo Jackson they really liked, which is why they were prepared to allow Cameron Bynum to walk. But I wonder if just for value, they would say Malachi Starks is an amazing value spot here.
This would be new for us. I assume that they've been connected from other people, Starks and the Vikings. This would be new for us. I think that would be, I like that the more I think of it, given the
pretty common though. Look,
yeah,
second most common draft pick.
I'm also coming around because I've seen some Vikings fans looking at Luther Burden or Emeka Egbuka or whichever receiver there. I've softened on this a little bit in past years, but I used to do all my mock drafts saying, like, get to your third and fourth playmaker as fast as possible, right? I used to maybe overdo that, maybe whatever. For the Vikings, though, for J.J. McCarthy, I love that. Love that. How do you cover Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison? Maybe you won't be able to pay Jordan Addison in a couple of years. Who knows? But I would love that. Maybe you can't, pay. You got Hawkinson already. How do you cover? Like, I already think they've got the best trio, including Hawkinson. Add Burden, add Egbuka, whoever you want. Good luck covering these guys.
And I will say Burden in particular brings something different to that group. Like, his skill set being plugged into that offense. Again, if you go back to 2023, Luther Burden, that guy's a top 10 draft pick. He moves after the catch, like prime Odell Beckham Jr. He's got make you miss ability, tackle breaking ability. Like, he's got that kind of gimmick, manufactured touch stuff that this offense. Justin Jefferson has that as well, but it's now a lot harder to do that to Justin Jefferson because he's Justin Jefferson, right? Like, all the attention is now on him, so it's a lot harder to manufacture him touches, whereas Burden could come in, take all those plays, and free up some attention. But I think Malachi Starks as the value play is the one.
Fine. I like that, though. Starks, man, that's another movable weapon, chess piece for Brian Flores there for the Vikings. I like that.
Houston on the board.
We're 2 hours in, Sam. We're making good time here. Be done by noon.
Smooth.
Texans at 25.
Yep.
What are you looking at?
I mean, I think offensive line still has to be on the table. Although
that
again,
Josh Simmons pick always seems to be an option here for Houston.
It does. It makes a lot of sense, and I think it's a good upgrade for them theoretically. They don't necessarily need him to start week 1, but he could very quickly unseat either offensive tackle.
I'm not saying it's the most obvious one. That's the tough thing about mock drafting here, right? Like these all make sense. You assume everybody evaluates players the same way, but like the Texans might not like Josh Simmons whatsoever. But theoretically, a guy coming off of injury with a 1-year stopgap at tackle like Cam Robinson, that part of it makes sense a lot for Houston.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a ton of sense. Like Josh Simmons, looked like a high-end offensive tackle, but again, knee injury, and it was an unusual one, I guess. It's not like a sort of quote-unquote routine ligament injury. It was a patella, but you don't need him to start right away. You brought in Cam Robinson to give you the flexibility, so you don't need to chase it. You've got Blake Fisher and Trent Brown battling it out on the other side. So theoretically, you could have two guys that are perfectly serviceable, but you might not have any long-term offensive tackle. Like if Blake Fisher isn't the guy, both Trent Brown and Cam Robinson are short-term solutions. So in any capacity, I think Josh Simmons makes sense for them.
Is that where you're going to go?
Yeah.
All right. So Texans take Simmons, future-proof, left tackle there. Rams up on the clock at pick 26 here. A couple of the players we've looked at for them, like Starks, are off the board here.
True.
Would the Rams look at that receiving group with Burden or Ibuka?
Well, they brought in Devontae Adams, which again, short-term rather than long-term solution, but still gives you the flexibility to not have to go chasing anything. I would love corner for them. Like again, they've done a pretty good job of doing exactly what we preach doing. Bring in stopgap veterans so you don't have to chase anything. They brought back Akella Witherspoon. You've got Darius Williams. If they could find the future at corner, though, I think that would be awesome.
I completely agree on corner. I would also suggest Colston Loveland in play here, right? He's still on the board for the Rams. The other piece, not for them in particular, but Amarian Hampton is still out there. And the teams that were going to be considering him, Cowboys at 12, Broncos, whoever, just throwing that out there. Guys, so like on draft night in real life at pick 26, we're going to say, wow, this guy's still on the board. This guy's still on the board. Who are those guys right now? A little bit of Hampton, maybe Loveland, and maybe the Burden, Ibuka receiver options, right? For the next few teams.
Yeah. We're not putting that evil out there that anybody's trading up for Amarian Hampton.
I didn't say that. I'm just saying at this point in the draft, on draft night, we're going to look at who are we expecting, who are we surprised that's still out there based off of pre-draft hype. I think Loveland could be a fit here. I'm with you on the cornerback spot. I don't know if, and they don't have a 2, so you can't really wait.
Right.
For the second. Oh, they have, they don't have a 2. They gave it up for Braden Fisk last year. So you can't really wait. You can't get the second wave of tight ends. I still think Chavon Ravel, he's making some visits with the Colts, Bills, and someone else to Vikings, I believe. Some teams that are in the back end of the first. I think Ravel should be a first-round player.
Let's see, cornerback. So it's Ravel, Trey Amos from Ole Miss, Maxwell Harrison, the Kentucky corner who had the amazing workout numbers, Benjamin Morrison from Notre Dame, and then Darian Porter, Iowa State corner with the crazy small sample size and freaky workout numbers.
And he's 24.
Yeah. Those are probably the only guys that you would say anybody else being drafted in the first would probably be a shock.
I like East Carolina. Any of those. Florida State as Araya Thomas. I wouldn't be
in terms of the consensus big board. What does
He's
the
4
cornerback
years.
group look like? Ravel's at 39. Hairston is at 35. Thomas is at 40. Trey Amos 41. Morrison 46. So all these guys are within the top 50.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if any of those guys were late first, depending on what teams are looking for.
Which one do you think the Rams is like? What's the best fit for this Rams team?
I think it's East Carolina.
East Carolina.
Yeah.
Shavon Ravel.
Yeah. So he only played 3 games last year. ACL. If he ACLs happen all the time. This isn't. I don't think it's a chronic thing.
And again,
I really think he would have been discussed as a top 15 player pre-injury.
Right. And again, you've built in the veteran contingency, so you don't need him starting week 1. You can slow play him and be good for the future.
I like that a lot for the Rams. Ravens up at pick 27, Sam.
Yep.
See, they got some good options. A couple edge rushers. They could go Tyler Booker. And if you're talking about scheme fit, Tyler Booker and his power, if he's an Osiris Torrance type, the way the Ravens like to play, do they want to go receiver once again? They've tried receivers so much over the last few years in the first round with Bateman, with Flowers.
The receiver thing is tough because the guys at the top, Luther Burden, Emeka Ibuka, I keep finding quite a lot of redundancy for the teams that could be in the receiver market. Yeah. Like Luther Burden and Zay Flowers, I think, have quite a lot of crossover. I think Ibuka and the Rams group, or Ibuka and this group as well, have quite a lot of, not redundancy, but like I don't think the receiver prospects are necessarily filling the potential skill set void on the teams that we're talking about.
That's just because of how we view the receivers. They're not complete difference makers. They're all complementary pieces.
Yeah, they're also not like the typical, like they're not the typical sort of X receiver that, like, I don't know if Bateman is that guy. The Rams, where they've got where you've got Puka Nacua as their sort of number 1 receiver. Now that changed when you bring in Devontae Adams, who can definitely play that X role. But like, if you were looking for the future complementary piece to Puka Nacua, you would want like a traditional X guy that plays the boundary. Whereas that's neither of these guys.
I once again encourage Juwan Clark to email even more of your guarantees, since you seem to want to guarantee things. You know what's going on here. Receiver, I think, is in play. Corner that you mentioned, edge, high value positions where they could use a starting corner right away opposite Nate Wiggins if needed, or always, loading up on edge or receiver and future proofing that roster.
With the rumors surrounding, Mark Andrews and that they move away from him, would they be a Colson Loveland pick, even though they have Isaiah Likely already on the roster?
I forgot Loveland's right there too. Yeah. Loveland's still there, huh?
Yeah.
I could see it.
Or, right? Again, trade up, right? Would a team come trading for Colson Loveland?
No, I don't think so.
Even a team like Kansas City, who needs a Travis Kelce successor, heir apparent, who only needs to jump up 4 spots.
For the social media reaction, I think maybe. Yes.
But remember, this is what happened last year, right? Like the trading around the bottom of the first round for wide receivers. It's the same idea.
The Chiefs would never convince an AFC rival to trade with them. That would never happen.
Right, except just last year.
They also traded the Orlando Brown trade a few years ago.
Sure.
With the Ravens. Oh, I like that. That's creative, Sam.
Oh, now you're interested.
I'm thinking for the social media clout. I'm thinking for the people that are going to read the mock draft and be like, wow.
Oh, no. Gonna have to pull out the
for the bait.
Pull out the Jimmy Johnson chart again.
Get the Jimmy chart out there.
All right. Where is this? This is 680. They're at 600. So we need to find 80 points. That's easy. It's the top of the 4th.
It's a 4.
Top of the 4th, bottom of the 3rd.
4. Look at this. The Chiefs going to get Colston Loveland. They went up to get Xavier Worthy. They're going up to get Colston Loveland right now.
95 is 120, so they'd get something back from that as well.
This is the best mock ever, Sam. This is officially the best mock ever.
Hang on, we need to give them something back. 183 is 15 back.
Oh yeah,
yeah. There we
Ravens
go.
Ravens will definitely pick swap this thing. They're not going to lose a pick volume.
That does it.
Beautiful. Get it out there. Do it.
We draft. And now we draft Travis Kelce's.
Colston Loveland to the Chiefs.
His heir.
Lions up on the clock here.
Edge rusher. Desperately.
Ezeraku.
Is it Ezeraku? Is he the guy you would take? So obviously he's sky high on PFF draft board right now. In terms
Bill,
of
hear me out. Hear me out, Bill paying Lions fans, because let me just repeat a discussion we've had on the show here before. Lions have a certain type of guy. They want their dogs. They want their, the gritty Dan Campbell types. That's who they've been drafting and developing, and that's who they have. They have their people. Can they afford a James Pierce who might be home playing video games instead of getting the extra work in? He might be. That's what the scouts are saying. Can they afford? Can this be their Patriots Corey Dillon? Can this be the one outlier where you bring him in, you try to get him to rise to the level of everyone else? And if you do, you have a player with top 10 talent. Because Ezeraku is good, but nobody was saying, oh, yeah, Donovan Ezeraku, we got to get him in the top 10. Pierce was talked about as 1.01 at one point. And if you can extract that, you can afford one, right? You can get one guy in the building that you can help get the best out of. Can Dan Campbell get the best out of James Pierce? So the debate here is, do you chase the James Pierce ceiling, or do you go with Ezeraku, who I think is going to step in and just be a really good player?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're more likely to stick with what's been working than to say what's been working has been working so well that we can afford to deviate for one time. We've been saying quite a lot this whole process that, like, most things, the important thing is the extreme edges of any given thing you're talking about, right? Whether it's athleticism, character, whatever. Most of the stuff in the middle, it's all more or less interchangeable. What's a problem is if you're way off on either end of things, you're either an absolute super freak athlete or you're a non-workable athlete. That's what we cut off. Everything in the middle is basically the same. I think the same thing is kind of true with character and red flags. And James Pierce Jr. is starting to approach the Jermaine Burton world of, like, nobody has good things to say about him.
Yeah. You can't put Burton on anybody unless, Isaiah Bond is the one guy that we got that close, but.
Right. And I'm not saying he's there, but he's starting to approach that world where literally everything you read is consistently the same idea, negative, not good. It's definitely his red flag. And the question is it so extreme that you're like, I'm just not taking that chance?
Yeah, baby. It's for the discussion here, Sam. It's for the discussion. We have to at least bring it up.
So
it's also funny because I don't even know. I always say this is the discussion they're having in the building. The Lions are maybe not even close to having that discussion. They're just like, nope, Pierce, not a fit, moving on. But man, if he was here at this point, I'd be having that discussion. Carry on. Who you going?
If you were shooting for the other side of the spectrum in terms of who's the most Detroit Lions, Dan Campbell, kneecap biting grit player, Landon Jackson would be a really interesting spot for them.
Yeah. Kind of a power type. I mean, it also depends on what type of player you want. If you want more of a power player opposite Aiden Hutchinson, because that's more his game.
Well, a type of a powerful, a power style of defender, like 6'6", 264 is what he measured at, but had really impressive workout numbers and had some of his best work against the best competition he played against.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's snuck into the late first in a couple different mock drafts here. I've also seen the chat suggest guard Tyler Booker as a fit.
Yeah. And has gotten better every year of his career. Like, I think there's a lot of Lions things about Landon Jackson.
It's your mock, baby. Whatever you want to do.
I sold myself. I don't even care about selling you.
I mean, I'd probably go Pierce and just incur the wrath of our bill paying friends, but Commanders at 29. A few more picks here. Where's Washington going to go? They're in the same edge market here.
Yeah, definitely. Always. This is a good Azaraki landing spot, isn't it?
I think so. Yes.
Consensus board for defensive for edge rushers. Pierce is still the top guy at 26, so he's come down from a pretty high peak. Ezeraku's at 32, Scouton 38, Landon Jackson, who we just took, was at 48, and then the Ohio State guys bookend almost at 50 and 52.
I think Ezeraku could be a really nice fit here. This is where
Ezeraku makes a ton of sense. Very productive, very dynamic.
You like their running back. You like their running back situation, but Marion Hampton's still here. So now we're talking about insert your favorite running back, and I always give them the bump, just like, hey, look at Jonathan Taylor with Anthony Richardson. Now look at Marion Hampton with Jaden Daniels.
Look, I think Omarion Hampton would probably would upgrade this running back room. I think their running back room is fine. I don't see it as it's listed as the first need on the PFF mock draft sim. I think that's overkill.
Yeah, again, I don't know when they update those things or what they're based off of. I agree. I don't think the running back room is awful, and I look both ways at it. Jaden Daniels, much like Lamar Jackson, is going to elevate your run game for the foreseeable future, where you could get away with lesser running backs, but the time that you add an elite person into it, maybe it goes to the moon. So that's kind of like your running back debate, I think, with any type of elite running quarterback like Washington has. Just throwing it out there so we don't rush through the pick. I like Ezeraku quite a bit as a fit here at 29.
Yeah, I think that makes a ton of sense. Look, Hampton would come in and upgrade the running back room, arguably be RB1. You've got Brian Robinson, Austin Eckler, Patterson's there as well, who's a good player. But that's good enough that I don't feel the need to chase it. And when a guy like Ezeraku is on the board, where that is an acute need for them, I'm just not turning that down.
All right, man. That puts the Buffalo Bills up on the clock. Any other big names still available? Not really.
I mean,
Bills at 30. Are they going next corner available here? Are they going defensive line depth? Do they take the James Pierce chance here? High upside play?
So top guys on the consensus board that are still available: Nick Emenwari, the South Carolina freak show safety, Omarion Hampton, running back, who we've just been talking about, James Pierce Jr., who obviously we've been talking about, Tyler Booker, the guard from Alabama with the terrible workout numbers, Jackson Dart, interestingly, at 30 is creeped into first round consensus spots.
I just noticed that today. Yeah, he's up there.
Then Ezeraku and Burden, 33 and 34. Receiver, Hairston, 35. Josh Connerly Jr., the Oregon offensive tackle, at 36. Donovan Jackson, the guard / tackle from Ohio State, at 37. Scouton, Azare Thomas, the Florida State corner, and Trey Amos. That's the top 40 guys.
I kind of like the next corners as the fit here. Again, you're kind of waiting on whatever was supposed to happen with Asante Samuel Jr., but as of right now, this next wave of corner I've always really liked for Buffalo here. They have the 2 second-round picks where I think some of the defensive line depth will still be available. Some of these corners will be available as well. So I'm a best defensive lineman available, which, by the way, remember you had 4 defensive tackles in the top 17, so none of those options who are sometimes available here for the Bills, they're not here. The edge rushers, you've gone through a bunch of those guys. I think the cornerback value looks really nice here.
I think Trey Amos is a great fit here.
Good eyes by me 3 years ago.
I mean, they really need a second starter. Forget, anything else. Christian Benford has become a great player for them, just signed a long-term deal. That second spot is wide open to be had. If it was a debate between that and a Kenneth Grant, say, a defensive tackle, I think you could make an argument, but absent that, I think they basically have to grab a corner here.
Well, you'd always take Kenneth Grant. I know that.
Well, I might,
everybody.
But
you would. Amos to the Bills?
They might as well.
You're working on a good mock here today, Sam. Gotta say. Compliments to you.
Oh, I'm sure the feedback will be nothing but positive from the people.
It'll be nothing but positive. I'll be doing my mock next week, so just get ready for that next Monday, and then you'll do your mock, fans, viewers, listeners, in a couple weeks here. We'll have the viewer mock. The Ravens are at 31.
Move back their 4 spots, still have effectively the same decision to make. Where are they going?
Pierce, Booker, receiver. I kind of like the Ibuka fit. I like him. I like the Burden fit. I just don't know if I want to go receiver again.
I think there's too much redundancy in either of those players for this specific receiving core.
I would probably go edge. Again, I don't know how to weigh the Pierce stuff. I just don't know how to weigh it. But he's a good player at this point.
Yeah, I'm starting to think that he just falls out of the first round based off the kind of noise we're hearing. But I do wonder if the 2 offensive linemen, Tyler Booker and Donovan Jackson, I think are in play here.
I think Booker's such a Ravens type player.
Right. He's the one guy. This is the one team I think that would just not care. I mean, for example, Daniel Faalele is their right guard right now, and he can barely move.
Yeah. I mean, Booker's entire, it depends on what you believe about Osiris Torrance, the starting guard for the Bills. Power player, doesn't have the best workout, pretty productive in college. And Torrance has been okay, like I said, but Booker's a very similar player along those lines. And if you look at a lot of workout comps historically, it's big bodied Bama type players who have had okay NFL careers. So it's not really talking up Booker, but I think he could be a good player.
Booker, he might not be as bad as his workout.
It's not as bad as the workout show. And the workout usually matters quite a bit, I think, for interior offensive linemen. So
I do think it's a perfect Ravens fit, though. It really is.
Now this is Howie and the Eagles. James Pierce is right there. The Eagles do it again, baby. Eagles do it again. They go defensive line. I really think Darius Alexander could be considered here at 32. He's the next interior defensive lineman on the consensus or by a lot of rankings. I think beyond that, you're TJ Sanders. I see you scrolling a little bit more undersized. Tyleik Williams, more of a run stopper than a pass rusher. I think Darius Alexander considered, Pierce considered, Scourton considered. I think they're all in there.
I think all of that is true. I also think the 2 receivers would be interesting here because they have less redundancy, I think, given what the Eagles currently have. And that Eagles receiving core, as much as it's really good with those 2, it's very thin. Like if either one of those guys gets hurt, that becomes a problem quite quickly.
I don't see it happening with how much they have locked up in A.J. Brown or Devontae Smith. I just don't see them going. I said I used to really focus on building the team, like get to 3 awesome receivers as quickly as possible. I don't see the Eagles doing that. If they don't go defensive line, I will honestly be shocked. Now, the way your mock has gone heavy defensive line. I don't know if it's going to go that way. I think they might have even better options on draft night than what they have right now. But I would be shocked if they don't go defensive line. Maybe if Malachi Starks is there, they consider the safety option, but I'd be shocked if they went receiver.
I mean, I think they probably go defensive line as well, but I don't think the reason is because they have money locked up in 2 wide receivers. The whole point is in drafting a 3rd guy, and I know they have Jahan Dotson there as well, but the whole point in adding a 3rd guy is if either one of those heavily invested receivers gets hurt, you're suddenly starting Jahan Dotson or Johnny Wilson or whoever. Like I get the reasoning. It's a contingency plan.
I just don't see them doing that in the first round, especially with Josh Sweat and Milton Williams out the door.
Yeah, I don't think they necessarily would either, except suddenly this has become a draft where the draft board has fallen such that 2 high-end first-round wide receivers, depending on what your board is, are available at 32.
If you want to incur the wrath of Eagles fans, good luck. But I think you still look at the next best defensive lineman. and that they're all in play there. Josh Connerly is an interesting pick. Josh Connerly is a really interesting and potential Eagles pick as well. As we figure, Lane Johnson heads into year 12 here.
He was in that draft class we talked about 9 hours ago.
That's a potential Eagles pick as well. Josh Connerly, or the year ahead offensive tackle, which by the way hasn't always worked for them. Andre Dillard a couple of years back.
I mean, a perfect example. That's a perfect example, though, of Lane Johnson is still playing at an extremely high level and is an elite player. On the other hand, his draft class is the same as Teron Armstead's, who just retired. So when you're sort of looking at how long does Lane Johnson have left, well, a guy from his draft class just called it quits, albeit one who's had, way more injuries. It's not apples to apples, but just as a sort of reminder of how old he is or how long in the tooth. I think they're definitely going defensive line as well. Darius Alexander would make some sense. James Pierce Jr. would be fascinating here as a landing spot, like the Eagles saying, screw it, let's see if we can do it. However, I said it earlier, I'm going to go Braden Swinson. I think he's going to sneak into the first round, and I'm now deciding the Eagles are going to be the team that does it.
What?
Yeah.
Braden Swinson in the first round.
Braden Swinson, the LSU edge rusher, has some awesome tape, and there's a lot of people right now that are getting into the draft or that are into the draft who are talking him up a lot. This guy, I think, is going to end up sneaking into the first round over somebody like James Pierce.
I like it. There we go. Braden Swinson. First to market, Braden Swinson. He's a good player. I'm with you. I could see it. I mean, with people sour on Nick Scourton, maybe didn't get to the, he was thought of as a top 15 pick coming to Texas A&M this year, didn't really get there. I mean, Swinson's legit. He's a good player. It's a deep edge class, man. It's a deep defensive line class overall. I still do believe that.
Yeah.
Good mock by you, Sam. In under 3 hours, just 2.5 hours. Pretty solid.
So really quick.
I love it, man. I'll do mine next week. If you guys, don't worry, viewers, you get yours in 2 weeks. We'll put some options up there. You get to vote on the options. It'll be great. Go check out our running back rankings, receiver rankings. We're gonna do edge rankings this week, talking about edge rushers.
Yeah, is that Wednesday?
Yeah, Wednesday. Edge rush rankings this week. We'll have Dane Brugler next week, trying to have a few more interviews. Got a lot going on these next few weeks. And also, most importantly, draft night. Put it in your calendar. You're with us. Check the mic. Thursday night, April 24th. We're going to be live during the draft, Thursday night and Friday night, just hanging out, just you and me hanging out, and everybody else hanging out, watching the draft together, and then we'll do our draft recaps pretty much right after that. So we're ready to work for 8-9 straight hours. You ready to be with us the entire time? You should do it. Hit the subscribe if you haven't done that already. Just a small percentage of you are actually subscribed. Be sure to do that, and just stick with us all throughout draft season here. Sam's mock draft. No negatives. No notes, Sam. Great mock from you.
No, it's perfect. It's a perfect mock.
Do we have to recap it at all for the audio listeners, at least the last few picks? Do you have the last 12 here?
Where do we stop? 20. So 21, the Pittsburgh Steelers grab Will Johnson, cornerback from Michigan. 22, the Seattle Seahawks, having traded down, grab Gray Zabel, the North Dakota State offensive lineman. He's going to be a guard or a center at the next level. 23, the Green Bay Packers grab Shamar Stewart, Texas A&M edge rusher. 24, the Vikings pounced on the value of Georgia safety Malachi Starks. 25, the Houston Texans grab tackle from Ohio State Josh Simmons. 26, the Rams grab Shavon Ravel, the corner from East Carolina. 27, Kansas City Chiefs got aggressive. They traded up with the Baltimore Ravens to grab the Travis Kelce heir apparent in Colston Loveland, the Michigan tight end. 28, the Detroit Lions grabbed Landon Jackson, edge from Arkansas. 29, the Washington Commanders grabbed edge Donovan Ezeraku from Boston College. 30, Buffalo Bills grabbed cornerback Trey Amos from Ole Miss. 31, having traded down, the Ravens grabbed Tyler Booker, guard from Alabama. And then 32, the Eagles shocked everybody by grabbing LSU edge rusher Braden Swinson with the final pick of the first round.
It was great. Great mock by you, Sam. And some of the questions in the chat, I believe we will do the spoiler thing. We're just going to react based off social media. I know that's a hot button issue for some who like to be surprised off the TV, but historically we like to go with the reactions right away. So that's kind of the way we've gone with it through the years. I assume we'll stay
it's
the
easiest
same
that way.
Yeah.
The info's out there, and also at this stage, the way that people consume their TVs with so many streamers, like those guys are a minute behind everybody else. So, if you don't want to have it spoiled because you're streaming it and you're a minute and a half behind the real world, like.
The key though, what you would do is you just pause put ours on 5-minute delay. So you keep ours on. And so if you want to be surprised, you have the TV, pause ours, start it 5 minutes later, and just let us be slightly delayed, and you'll get our analysis right after the TV analysis.
I mean, you can,
or if you don't want to wait for the TV, you just be with us and we'll let you know as soon as we find out when everybody's.
I mean, my suggestion would just be to ignore the TV and just follow along with us.
No, I get it. Some people, some people like the old school TV stuff. That's the one thing we've lost I haven't watched a draft in, well over 10 years. I've lost it. We're always live doing something, right? So I don't get those reactions anymore from the TV. All right. Great show. Good stuff. Appreciate everybody. And we'll be back again on Wednesday. Edge rusher rankings and all sorts of great stuff in the coming weeks. We'll see you again Wednesday with more Check the Mic.